What if the greatest secrets of human history were not lost, but deliberately hidden in plain sight? Across the deserts, valleys, and ancient cities of the Middle East, there lie monuments, artifacts, and technologies that challenge everything we think we know about our past. Structures that defy conventional engineering, symbols whose meaning slips through the grasp of modern scholarship, and records of civilizations whose knowledge seems impossibly advanced for their time. For centuries, scientists and historians have pieced together fragments of this ancient world, but some mysteries remain stubbornly unsolved. How were these colossal structures built with such precision without the machines we rely on today? Why do certain artifacts exhibit properties we cannot fully explain? In this journey, we step beyond the textbooks and into the shadows of history itself, exploring enigmas science has yet to unravel and uncovering stories that may redefine the boundaries of human possibility. Join us, and let the mysteries of the ancient Middle East speak for themselves. Nestled in the arid hills of the Jordan Valley, Tell es-Sultan rises quietly above the surrounding plains, a subtle mound of earth and stone that belies the depth of its history. From a distance, it appears unremarkable, a modest rise of ochre soil, dust swirling in the dry wind. But every layer beneath its surface tells a story that stretches back more than 10 millennia. This is Jericho, often called the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, a place where human presence seems to stretch almost endlessly into the past. Archaeologists have painstakingly peeled back layer after layer of this ancient tell, revealing a succession of settlements, walls, and fortifications that chronicle the emergence of urban life in the Fertile Crescent. Massive stone foundations, some weighing several tons, hint at organized labor and architectural skill in a period when much of the world was still nomadic. Yet even in these discoveries, questions remain. How could a community so early in human history muster the resources, knowledge, and coordination to construct such formidable defenses? And what drove the people of Jericho to fortify themselves so intensely, long before large empires had emerged elsewhere? The walls of Jericho themselves are a subject of enduring fascination. Excavations have revealed circular towers and stone ramparts, built with a precision that modern engineers still admire. Radiocarbon dating places some of these structures as early as 8000 BCE, suggesting that the city's builders possessed an understanding of construction and urban planning that challenges conventional timelines of civilization. Scholars debate how these massive stones were moved and positioned, and some even wonder if methods now lost to history were once common knowledge. Could there have been techniques or tools we no longer recognize, or did ingenuity alone account for such feats? Beyond the physical remnants, Jericho is shrouded in myth and legend. Ancient texts speak of a city that fell in dramatic and almost miraculous fashion, its walls collapsing in a single day, a story immortalized in the Hebrew Bible. While archaeological evidence offers partial explanations, the precise events remain elusive. Were there natural catastrophes, seismic activity, or social upheavals that contributed to Jericho's transformations? Or is there something more, a confluence of factors that modern science has yet to fully decode? The tell itself holds subtler enigmas as well. Layers of ash and remnants of early agriculture suggest a community experimenting with domestication, trade, and ritual practices. Pottery fragments and figurines hint at belief systems, yet their meanings remain largely speculative. Scholars can reconstruct patterns of daily life, diets, and social organization, but the inner thoughts, fears, and aspirations of Jericho's earliest inhabitants remain locked in silence. What motivated them to settle here, to invest so much in fortifications and ritual, in a landscape both unforgiving and bountiful? Some researchers have ventured into more unconventional territory. Could Jericho's longevity and apparent sophistication indicate a lost body of knowledge, passed down and then forgotten through the ages? Might the city's location, at the convergence of fertile lands and ancient trade routes, have allowed its inhabitants to experiment with ideas and technologies that left little trace outside their mound? While such theories remain speculative, they invite a broader reflection. The deeper we probe into el-Sultan, the more we confront the limits of what we can know with certainty. As the sun sets over the Jordan Valley, casting long shadows across the Tell's contours, it becomes clear that Jericho is not merely a collection of ruins. It is a living question, layered in soil and stone, in myth and memory. Each excavation, each fragment uncovered, seems to answer some questions while simultaneously raising new ones. What stories remain buried beneath the centuries of sediment? And how much of Jericho's past, with its ingenuity and mystery, has simply vanished into the sands of time, waiting for future generations to rediscover, or perhaps never to be fully understood at all? From the sun-scorched plains of Jericho, our journey takes us southward, along the shimmering waters of the Dead Sea, to a stark and formidable landscape that seems carved by both wind and time itself. Rising abruptly from the desert floor, Masada stands as a natural fortress, a plateau of rock and sand cliffs, sheer and unyielding, a sentinel overlooking one of the most inhospitable regions of the ancient world. Its isolation is almost absolute, accessible only by narrow, winding paths that cling to the mountainside, as if nature itself intended to protect whatever lay atop this desolate summit. Masada is not merely a geological marvel. It is a monument to human ingenuity, determination, and perhaps the extremes of desperation. Around the 1st century CE, this plateau became the stage for one of the most dramatic episodes in the history of the region. Herod the Great had transformed Masada into a sprawling fortress palace, complete with granaries, cisterns, and bathhouses, a sophisticated oasis seemingly suspended above the desert below. The engineering is remarkable. Massive stone blocks, precise masonry, and aqueducts that brought water from miles away, all in a place where survival alone would have been a formidable challenge. How did architects and laborers accomplish such feats atop this isolated cliff, using tools and techniques centuries before modern machinery? The historical record tells of the siege by the Roman legion in 73 CE, an event that has captured the imagination of scholars, writers, and travelers for nearly 2 millennia. Josephus, the Jewish historian, recounts how the defenders, zealots resisting Roman domination, chose death over surrender, preserving their autonomy in a final, tragic act. Archaeological investigations have corroborated elements of his narrative. Remnants of ramparts, weapons, and even skeletal remains tell a story of intense preparation and human resilience. Yet even here, layers of ambiguity persist. How accurate is the historical record, and what truths lie beyond the written word? Can the ruins themselves, silent and eroded by time, reveal the inner lives of those who once inhabited this fortress? Masada's design raises further questions that modern science struggles to fully explain. The granaries and cisterns could store supplies for extended periods, but the scale and efficiency suggest a level of planning that seems almost otherworldly for the era. Some researchers have speculated about lost techniques in stone cutting or water management that might have allowed such feats. Was there knowledge of hydraulics, meteorology, or construction methods that did not survive beyond these ancient walls? Could Masada itself be a testament to experimental architectural brilliance? A place where necessity drove innovation far beyond the known standards of the time? Beyond its physical and historical mysteries, Masada occupies a symbolic and almost mystical space in the imagination. Standing atop the plateau today, the wind carrying the scent of salt from the Dead Sea, one can almost sense the echoes of those who lived, worked, and ultimately died here. The desert stretches endlessly in every direction, and yet the fortress seems intimately human, shaped by hands that labored tirelessly to impose order on the unforgiving landscape. What drove the zealots to endure such extremes, to fortify themselves against the might of Rome, knowing the odds of survival were so slim? And how much of their story, their strategies, and their final moments have been irrevocably lost to time? Even the pathways leading to Masada carry their own enigmatic allure. The famous Snake Path, a winding trail etched into the cliffside, has guided countless visitors over centuries, yet its precise origins and use remain partly speculative. Was it designed purely for defense, or did it serve ceremonial or symbolic purposes as well? How did those who first ascended this path perceive the vastness below, the isolation above, and the delicate balance between life and death in this extreme environment? Today, archaeologists continue to study Masada with modern tools, ground-penetrating radar, drone surveys, and meticulous excavation, but the plateau resists complete understanding. Every discovery, from a fragment of pottery to a portion of a wall, seems to open new questions rather than close old ones. Masada is more than a ruin. It is a puzzle, a place where human ambition, ingenuity, and the harsh realities of survival intersect in ways that remain partly obscured. As the sun dips low over the desert horizon, casting Masada's sheer cliffs in deep shadow, the fortress appears simultaneously eternal and elusive. It is a place of stark contrasts, isolation and community, ingenuity and desperation, history and mystery. And perhaps this is the essence of Masada itself, a site where science and history can illuminate only part of the story, leaving the rest to the imagination. What secrets remain hidden among its stone terraces, granaries, and fortifications? What truths, known only to those who once walked these heights, may have vanished with the wind? The plateau endures, silent yet eloquent, inviting us to ponder the limits of human achievement and the mysteries that time has chosen not to surrender. From the rocky cliffs and desert fortresses of Masada, our exploration shifts northward to the fertile plains of northeastern Syria, where the Euphrates winds its slow, glimmering path across the land. Here lies Tel Leilan, an ancient mound that rises modestly above the surrounding fields, a seemingly ordinary hill concealing extraordinary layers of human history. Unlike the dramatic cliffs of Masada, Tel Leilan's subtle contours give little hint of the civilizations buried beneath. Yet, beneath this unassuming rise lies a chronicle of urban complexity, trade, and early statecraft stretching back nearly 5,000 years. Archaeologists have spent decades carefully excavating Tel Leilan, revealing a city whose scale and sophistication rival other major centers of the ancient Near East. Massive walls, organized streets, and public buildings hint at a highly developed urban society, one that emerged in the shadow of the mighty Euphrates. Cuneiform tablets uncovered at the site record administrative transactions, trade, and correspondence, evidence of a literate and bureaucratically organized civilization. These findings are remarkable in themselves, yet they also provoke deeper questions. How did such an advanced urban center arise in a region that, to the untrained eye, seems so remote and fragile? What drove these early inhabitants to engineer such a city, capable of managing resources and people with remarkable efficiency? The architecture of Tel Leilan is at once practical and enigmatic. Defensive walls encircle the site, suggesting concerns about warfare or territorial protection, yet some structures' purposes remain uncertain. Massive granaries, strategically placed to store surplus grain, indicate a society capable of planning for both prosperity and scarcity. Scholars have speculated that the city's planners may have possessed knowledge of agricultural management and water control that would have been extraordinary for the time. Could these ancient engineers have developed techniques now lost to history? Or did the city emerge simply from the gradual accumulation of human ingenuity over generations? One of the most intriguing aspects of Tel Leilan is the evidence of sudden, dramatic shifts in the city's fortunes. Archaeological layers reveal periods of rapid growth followed by abrupt abandonment. Some scholars point to environmental changes, shifts in the Euphrates flow, soil salinization, or drought, as possible explanations. Others suggest social upheaval, internal conflict, or external invasion. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the patterns observed. How could a city so carefully planned, with sophisticated infrastructure and abundant resources, be deserted seemingly overnight? And what might this tell us about the vulnerabilities of early urban civilizations, even those that appear remarkably advanced? The cuneiform tablets recovered at Tel Leilan add another layer of mystery. While many detail the routine administration of the city, taxes, trade, ration distributions, others are more cryptic. References to deities, omens, and ceremonial practices hint at a spiritual or ritual dimension that we can only partially reconstruct. Did these beliefs guide political decisions, economic strategies, or social organization? And what insights might we gain if we could fully interpret the symbolic and ritual significance encoded in these ancient texts? Some researchers have ventured into more speculative territory, considering whether Tel Leilan represents more than an ordinary city-state. Could it have been a hub of knowledge or technology whose impact extended far beyond its geographic boundaries? The precision in construction, the scale of administrative organization, and the sophistication of agricultural planning all suggest a civilization operating with capabilities that challenge our assumptions about the early 3rd millennium BCE. Was Tel Leilan an experimental city, a proving ground for social, economic, and technological innovations that influenced the broader Mesopotamian world? Or was it, like so many other ancient sites, a fleeting bloom of human ingenuity that vanished before it could leave a lasting imprint? The landscape surrounding Tel Leilan contributes to its enigmatic allure. From the summit of the mound, one can see the vast plains stretching to the horizon, punctuated by tributaries of the Euphrates and scattered smaller tells marking forgotten settlements. The isolation, yet connection, of the city to major trade routes hints at a delicate balance between self-sufficiency and interdependence. How did the inhabitants navigate the challenges of geography, climate, and political pressure? And what lessons, if any, might their successes and failures hold for understanding the rise and fall of early civilizations elsewhere in the ancient Middle East? Even as excavations continue, Tel Leilan resists full comprehension. Each artifact, each architectural fragment offers a glimpse into lives that were intricate, purposeful, and profoundly human, but also tantalizingly opaque. The city's sudden decline, the sophistication of its administration, the mysterious gaps in the historical record, all combine to make Tel Leilan a place where evidence and enigma coexist, where every answer seems to open new questions. As the sun sets over the Euphrates, painting the plain in shades of gold and crimson, Tel Leilan seems almost alive in its silence. The city's walls and foundations speak quietly of ambition, ingenuity, and impermanence. What knowledge lies still buried beneath the tell? What truths about early urban life, social organization, and human resilience have yet to be uncovered? Tel Leilan endures, a subtle mound in the landscape, a repository of mysteries that science can illuminate but may never fully unravel, inviting us to wonder what secrets the ancient Middle East continues to hide beneath its ancient soil. From the sprawling plains of Tel Leilan, where the Euphrates whispers of forgotten cities, our journey turns southwest, across deserts and rugged hills, to the lands of ancient Yemen, where the Marib Temples rise from the arid landscape with a quiet, enduring presence. Unlike the flat mounds and modest tells of northern Mesopotamia, Marib is a place of monumental ambition, a city of stone and ritual that commands attention even amidst the harsh desert winds. Its temples, weathered by millennia of sun, sand, and time, appear both fragile and eternal, remnants of a civilization whose influence once reached far beyond these arid valleys. The Marib Temples were the spiritual and ceremonial heart of the Sabaean kingdom, a society renowned for its wealth, trade networks, and architectural sophistication. Archaeological investigations reveal massive stone blocks carefully fitted to form expansive courtyards, altars, and sanctuaries. Intricate inscriptions, etched in the ancient South Arabian script, speak of deities, rituals, and offerings, hinting at a belief system that governed daily life and shaped political authority. Yet, for all we know about the Sabaeans, the temples themselves retain an enigmatic quality, as if the stones are whispering secrets that human understanding has yet to grasp. How were these temples designed with such precision and symmetry in an era lacking advanced surveying tools? What knowledge guided the placement of columns, altars, and ceremonial spaces to align with both human ritual and the cosmic rhythms of the sky? Marib was also a center of extraordinary hydraulic engineering, with the Great Dam of Marib nearby regulating the scarce waters of the desert. The temples, in turn, were intimately connected to these lifelines, suggesting a culture in which religion, agriculture, and political power were inseparable. Archaeologists have documented sophisticated water channels and storage systems, evidence that the Sabaeans understood the delicate balance of survival in an arid environment. But the interplay between engineering and ritual raises further questions. Did the temples serve only as places of worship, or were they also centers of technological experimentation and administration? Could their construction reflect knowledge of astronomy, hydraulics, or geometry that has been partially lost to time? Even the iconography carved into the stone invites speculation. Figures of deities, symbolic animals, and abstract motifs are repeated across different temples, yet their precise meaning often eludes modern scholars. Were these symbols purely religious, or did they encode political messages, historical events, or even scientific observations? Some researchers have suggested that certain alignments within the temple complexes correspond to celestial events, the solstices, equinoxes, or movements of specific stars. If true, this would imply a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, entwined with ritual practice in a way that science is only beginning to appreciate. The rise and fall of Marib itself deepen the mystery. The city flourished for centuries, becoming a hub of trade that connected the Arabian Peninsula to Africa, the Mediterranean, and Mesopotamia. Yet eventually, the dams failed, trade routes shifted, and the temples were abandoned, left to the mercy of wind and sand. Archaeological evidence shows signs of both gradual decline and abrupt disruption. Was the city undone purely by environmental changes and economic shifts, or did social upheaval, internal conflict, or even spiritual crises play a role? Could there have been knowledge or technology now lost that might have prevented its decline, leaving us with only these silent monuments as testament? The temples themselves hint at human ambition and creativity on a scale that still resonates today. Stones weighing tons were quarried, transported, and positioned with meticulous care, often over distances that challenge modern understanding. How did the Sabaeans achieve such feats without the cranes, pulleys, and machinery we rely on today? Were there now forgotten techniques, or was it simply the collective ingenuity and determination of skilled workers, guided by religious and cultural imperatives? And what inspired the vision behind these temples? The desire to honor gods, to assert political power, or to encode a legacy meant to endure beyond the lifespan of any single ruler or generation? There are also whispers of the more mysterious aspects of Marib. Ancient inscriptions occasionally refer to extraordinary offerings and rituals, and some texts hint at astronomical or calendrical knowledge encoded in temple design. Could the temples have served as observatories, sacred libraries, or even repositories of knowledge meant to survive the centuries? While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, the precision, scale, and integration of ritual, engineering, and urban planning suggest a civilization whose capabilities may still exceed our full understanding. Today, visiting the Marib Temples is an experience both humbling and unsettling. The desert stretches endlessly, yet the stones stand resolute, speaking of human ambition, ingenuity, and devotion. Wind sweeps across the courtyards, carrying echoes of chants, footsteps, and rituals that have long since faded into memory. Each carved relief, each remaining column, offers a glimpse of a civilization at the height of its sophistication, and yet so much remains inaccessible, lost beneath layers of sand and silence. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the temple courtyards, one cannot help but feel the weight of unanswered questions. How much of the Sabaeans' knowledge, artistry, and understanding of the world has been lost to time? What mysteries remain encoded in the alignments, inscriptions, and construction of the temples? And perhaps most compelling of all, if such a civilization could flourish and vanish so completely, how many other secrets lie buried across the deserts of the ancient Middle East, waiting for the patient eye and careful hand to reveal them? Marib endures, a monument to human ambition and ingenuity, a puzzle whose pieces we have only begun to glimpse. It is a place where science and history illuminate fragments of truth, yet leave space for wonder, reflection, and the persistent sense that the ancient world still holds secrets we may never fully unravel. From the sun-baked temples of Marib, where the Sabaeans mastered both ritual and water in the unforgiving desert, our journey moves northward, along the fertile valleys of the Tigris and Karun rivers, to the city of Shushtar in southwestern Iran. Here, the landscape is dominated not by grand palaces or temples, but by a vast, intricate network of canals, bridges, dams, and watermills that seem to merge seamlessly with the natural flow of the river. The Shushtar historical hydraulic system rises from the land like an enormous living machine, a testament to human ingenuity that has endured for centuries, yet still challenges our understanding of ancient engineering. At first glance, Shushtar appears deceptively simple, a series of channels guiding water through the city, irrigating fields and powering mills. But closer inspection reveals astonishing complexity. The system comprises a maze of carefully aligned canals, weirs, tunnels, and spillways, all designed to regulate the mighty Karun River's flow, harnessing its energy for both agriculture and industry. Archaeologists and engineers alike marvel at the precision of these constructions, which redirect torrents of water with meticulous control, sustaining the city in a region where survival depends entirely on mastery of the river. How did the engineers of Shushtar, working in eras long before modern surveying tools, achieve such exacting alignment and durability? The system's origins are equally fascinating and partially mysterious. Evidence suggests that much of the infrastructure was constructed during the Sasanian Empire around the 3rd century CE, yet some parts may be even older, hinting at knowledge passed down from previous civilizations. The scale of the hydraulic works, combined with their longevity, suggests an understanding of hydrodynamics, load distribution, and material engineering that continues to astonish modern scholars. Were the designers relying purely on empirical observation, honed over generations, or did they possess theoretical insights that have been lost to history? What sets Shushtar apart is not just the technical achievement, but the way the system blends functionality with ingenuity in a living environment. Water flows not only to irrigate crops, but to power mills, fill reservoirs, and shape the very urban layout. Some canals are subterranean, hidden beneath streets or carved into bedrock, while others run alongside ancient fortifications, turning the city itself into an integrated water-controlled landscape. Could the planners have envisioned the city as a harmonious system, where engineering, urban planning, and daily life were intertwined with a sophistication rarely seen in antiquity? The ingenuity of the system is matched by its scale. Water diverted from the Karun River travels through an intricate network of channels over kilometers, dropping in precise gradients to power dozens of watermills, long before the concept of mechanized industry existed. The sheer precision required to achieve such flow rates, while maintaining structural integrity across centuries of seasonal variation and occasional floods, remains a subject of admiration and puzzlement for engineers today. Could there have been techniques or knowledge lost over time, methods of measurement or materials that allowed for such precise construction without the instruments we now take for granted? Beyond the engineering marvel, Shushtar carries an aura of mystery in its historical context. The Sasanian texts mention grand projects of irrigation and city planning, yet few records detail the methods used to design such an integrated hydraulic network. Inscriptions and local oral histories hint at ingenuity, guided by both necessity and a spiritual understanding of the river as a living force. Did the engineers see their work purely as practical, or did they also imbue it with symbolic meaning, aligning canals, dams, and mills with the rhythms of nature and celestial patterns? Some modern researchers have speculated that certain alignments and construction choices may reflect knowledge of hydrology and astronomy that remains only partially understood. The system's endurance adds to its enigmatic quality. Floods, earthquakes, and centuries of human use have left their mark, yet much of the network continues to function. Modern engineers studying Shushtar often find themselves humbled, questioning how a civilization without modern instruments could create a system so adaptable, resilient, and precise. Could the Shushtar hydraulic system represent a culmination of empirical wisdom accumulated over generations? Or was it, in part, the product of insights and techniques now lost to time? Walking along the ancient canals today, one can hear only the gentle murmur of water, the faint creak of sluice gates, and the wind rustling through the reeds. The city seems alive yet silent, speaking in the language of flowing water and stone. Each mill, each channel, each arching bridge is a reminder of human determination to bend nature to collective purpose, yet the mystery remains. How did these engineers solve problems that modern science can only partially replicate? What inspired the vision behind such an integrated system? Practical necessity, aesthetic sensibility, spiritual guidance, or some combination beyond our grasp? The Shushtar hydraulic system is more than a collection of canals and bridges. It is a living monument to human ingenuity and ambition, a civilization's dialogue with the forces of nature. It challenges our assumptions about what ancient societies could achieve, suggesting that knowledge, skill, and vision were cultivated far beyond the levels we often ascribe to antiquity. And yet, despite centuries of study, it retains its enigmas, the exact methods of design, the full scope of engineering knowledge, and the philosophical or ritual dimensions that may have guided its creation. As the sun sets over the Karun River, casting long shadows across canals and stone arches, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe at the harmony between human ingenuity and natural forces. What truths remain hidden in the tunnels, the sluices, and the silent flowing waters? What knowledge, perhaps recorded in lost texts or preserved only in the hands-on wisdom of ancient engineers, has vanished with the centuries? Shushtar endures, a testament to human innovation, a puzzle of remarkable complexity, and a silent invitation to wonder at the mysteries science has yet to fully explain. From the flowing waters and ingenious canals of Shushtar, where ancient engineers tamed rivers with a precision that still inspires awe, our journey moves northwest to the heart of Syria, to a site whose stone walls have borne witness to millennia of history, the Citadel of Aleppo. Rising majestically atop a natural mound in the center of the city, the citadel dominates the skyline, its silhouette etched against the horizon like a sentinel frozen in time. Even from a distance, one can sense the weight of its presence: massive stone walls, towering gates, and ramparts that curve and rise in a labyrinthine embrace of fortification. Here, every block of stone, every archway, every corridor carries the accumulated memory of countless generations. The Citadel of Aleppo is not merely a fortress. It is a living chronicle of civilization. Archaeological evidence suggests that this site has been continuously occupied since at least the 3rd millennium BCE, making it one of the oldest citadels in the world. Over the centuries, it has been expanded, rebuilt, and adapted by successive empires: the Greeks, Romans, Ayyubids, Mamluks, and Ottomans, all leaving their indelible marks. The scale and complexity of the structure are staggering. Vast courtyards, intricate defensive systems, secret tunnels, cisterns, and ceremonial halls intricately carved from the bedrock itself. How did ancient architects manage to design and construct a fortress so imposing and resilient, capable of withstanding earthquakes, sieges, and the relentless passage of time? The walls themselves tell stories that remain partly mysterious. The outer fortifications, reinforced with massive stone blocks, rise almost impossibly straight, while the interior courtyards reveal layers of earlier constructions hidden beneath more recent renovations. Scholars have noted unusual features in some of the oldest sections: stonework that seems to defy conventional methods, defensive structures aligned in ways that suggest advanced understanding of strategy and geometry. Could these be the result of trial and error over generations, or evidence of architectural knowledge that was remarkably sophisticated for the era? What drove builders to invest such effort into perfection, balancing practical defense with aesthetic and symbolic considerations? The citadel's interior amplifies the sense of enigma. Beneath the grand halls and battlements lie a network of underground chambers and tunnels, some accessible, others blocked or collapsed. These spaces may have served as storage, water cisterns, or secret escape routes, yet their full extent remains unknown. Explorers and archaeologists have speculated about hidden passages that might connect the citadel to other parts of the city, or even to far-off regions. Could there have been concealed networks used to move people, treasure, or messages unseen, a strategy so advanced that we may never fully understand it? And what other secrets lie trapped in the walls, waiting to be rediscovered? The Citadel of Aleppo is not only remarkable for its engineering, but also for the symbolic weight it carries. Its gates and halls bear inscriptions, decorative motifs, and reliefs that hint at political, religious, and cultural narratives of the civilizations that occupied it. Yet, the meaning of many of these carvings remains elusive. Were they purely decorative, or did they serve as coded messages, marking allegiances, victories, or sacred knowledge? Scholars debate the alignment of certain chambers and gates. Some suggest astronomical or astrological significance, while others consider ceremonial or spiritual functions. Did the architects intend to embed messages in stone that would outlast empires, conveying knowledge or belief to future generations in ways that remain partially hidden from our understanding? Even the citadel's sheer longevity adds to its mystery. Earthquakes, sieges, and human conflict have left their marks, yet much of the structure remains remarkably intact. How did builders achieve such durability in an active seismic zone? Were there construction methods, materials, or knowledge that have since been lost? Techniques that allowed them to combine strength, flexibility, and elegance in ways that modern engineers still admire? And if such knowledge existed, why did it not become widespread, leaving only rare examples like Aleppo to testify to it? Walking along its ancient ramparts today, one feels a strange sense of continuity. The city stretches outward, bustling with life, yet atop the mound, the citadel maintains an almost timeless stillness. Wind whispers through the stone corridors, and sunlight filters through arches and windows carved centuries ago, illuminating walls etched with the marks of countless hands. The citadel seems both a monument to human ambition and a repository of unanswered questions, a place where past and present coexist in delicate tension. The Citadel of Aleppo challenges the observer to consider the boundaries of knowledge, skill, and endurance in the ancient world. What prompted the builders to craft a fortress of such immense scale and complexity, balancing practicality, artistry, and perhaps hidden knowledge? What stories, rituals, or technologies have vanished within these walls, leaving only fragments for us to piece together? And as modern science and archaeology reveal layer after layer of construction and renovation, how much of the citadel's original secrets will remain beyond our grasp, lingering in shadows, corridors, and stone that has survived millennia? As the sun sets over Aleppo, casting long shadows across the city and bathing the citadel in warm golden light, one cannot help but feel the weight of its history and the depth of its mysteries. The Citadel of Aleppo stands as a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and ambition, a puzzle whose answers continue to elude us. What truths, hidden in its stone walls, vaulted halls, and subterranean passages, have yet to be uncovered? And how many secrets of the ancient Middle East remain quietly preserved within this fortress, waiting for those who dare to explore them? From the imposing stone walls of Aleppo, where human ambition and architectural mastery have left a fortress that has withstood millennia, our journey leads westward to the Mediterranean coastline, to a city whose history stretches back so far that it challenges the very notion of time. Byblos. Here, on a rocky promontory overlooking the turquoise waters of the Levant, the ruins rise in quiet dignity, their worn stones and fragmented columns hinting at a civilization that has endured, adapted, and influenced the course of history for over 7,000 years. Even now, the city seems suspended between past and present, as if the very air carries whispers from millennia of trade, conquest, and human ingenuity. Byblos is widely recognized as one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, a place where human settlement has persisted from the Neolithic into modern times. Archaeological layers reveal successive civilizations: Canaanite, Phoenician, Roman, Crusader, each leaving a tangible mark on the city's architecture, streets, and sacred spaces. The remnants of temples, city walls, and royal palaces speak not only of political power, but also of cultural and religious sophistication. Yet, even with centuries of study, the city retains an enigmatic quality. How did the earliest settlers organize themselves so effectively, constructing urban centers, sacred precincts, and trade infrastructure in an age when writing itself was just emerging? The city's harbor and trade networks hint at Byblos's extraordinary reach. Archaeologists have found evidence that the city maintained connections with ancient Egypt, Cyprus, and Mesopotamia, exporting timber, resins, and luxury goods in exchange for wealth, knowledge, and exotic materials. Some of the earliest known alphabetic inscriptions also appear here, suggesting that Byblos may have played a crucial role in shaping the written word itself. How did a relatively small coastal settlement develop such a sophisticated system of communication, administration, and trade that would influence civilizations across the region? What knowledge, techniques, or innovations were cultivated here that remain partly invisible to modern historians? The ruins themselves carry subtler mysteries. Massive stones, some intricately carved, are arranged in ways that still provoke questions about construction methods and alignment. Temples and altars, oriented according to patterns that may correspond to celestial events, suggest an advanced understanding of astronomy intertwined with ritual practice. Could these alignments have served more than symbolic purposes? Were they markers of agricultural cycles, political authority, or perhaps encoded calendars of knowledge now lost? Even within fragments of walls and columns, one senses the deliberate intent of builders who sought not merely to construct, but to leave a lasting imprint of human ingenuity and spiritual consciousness. Byblos's burial practices and religious artifacts add further intrigue. Tombs containing elaborate offerings, ceremonial objects, and inscribed stelae suggest a society that invested deeply in the metaphysical as well as the material. The motivations behind these practices remain partly speculative. Did the ancients of Byblos merely honor the dead? Or did these rituals encode knowledge about astronomy, medicine, or social order that we have yet to decode? And how much of this understanding was transmitted orally, through symbols, or through structures whose original meaning is now obscured by time? Trade and connectivity may offer part of the explanation for Byblos's enduring significance. Yet many questions remain unanswered. The city thrived through environmental changes, political upheavals, and waves of conquest, suggesting a resilience that seems almost engineered. How did its inhabitants adapt to shifting climates, rising and falling seas, and the pressures of empires pressing from every direction? Could there have been organizational strategies, technological methods, or knowledge systems that allowed Byblos to maintain continuity when so many other ancient cities vanished? Even the very stones of Byblos seem to speak of mysteries beyond conventional explanation. Carved reliefs, megalithic foundations, and the layering of successive civilizations create a palimpsest of human ambition and creativity. Some inscriptions hint at sacred knowledge, trade secrets, or historical events, yet the incomplete nature of the record leaves vast gaps in our understanding. Could the city have preserved forms of knowledge or cultural wisdom that have now vanished entirely, leaving only tantalizing fragments for modern scholars to decipher? Walking among the ruins today, one feels an almost tangible connection to the past. The salty sea breeze carries echoes of merchants' calls, the clatter of carts on cobblestones, and the quiet murmur of ceremonies held in temples long vanished. Each column, each stone, each artifact suggests a civilization deeply engaged with the natural, social, and spiritual world. A civilization whose ingenuity, ambition, and resilience endure even as much of its story remains hidden. Byblos challenges us to rethink the scale and depth of ancient human achievement. Its walls, harbors, and sacred spaces reveal a civilization both practical and visionary, one that mastered trade, writing, architecture, and ritual with sophistication that continues to inspire modern inquiry. And yet, for all that we know, so much remains a mystery. What truths lie buried beneath the layers of stone and sediment, waiting to be uncovered? What insights into early human civilization, culture, and knowledge have been lost to the centuries? As the sun dips toward the Mediterranean, casting long shadows across the ruins and illuminating the weathered stones with golden light, Byblos stands as a monument to human ambition and endurance. It is a city where history and mystery coexist, where the known and the unknown are entwined, and where the remnants of the past continue to ask questions that science and archaeology can illuminate, but perhaps never fully answer. What secrets remain buried beneath its foundations, waiting for those patient enough to uncover them? And what lessons about human ingenuity and resilience might they still hold for us today? From the coastal ruins of Byblos, where ancient civilizations once thrived along the Mediterranean trade routes, our journey now carries us southward into the stark, sun-baked expanses of Egypt's western desert, to the heart of the Siwa oasis. Rising from the ochre sands like a city carved from time itself, the Shali Fortress dominates the oasis, a sprawling complex of mud brick walls, narrow alleyways, and crumbling towers. Even in ruin, its presence is commanding, a testament to the resilience of human ingenuity amid one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. The fortress seems to grow organically from the sands, as though it was always meant to emerge from the desert. Yet its origins and construction still provoke questions centuries later. Shali, the historic center of Siwa Oasis, was built primarily from kershef, a mixture of salt, clay, and straw, an unusual material that allowed the fortress to rise rapidly but made it vulnerable to the rare yet destructive desert rains. At its height, the fortress housed thousands, encompassing homes, mosques, markets, and public spaces, all enclosed within massive defensive walls. It functioned as both a refuge and a cultural hub, a place where the oasis inhabitants could sustain life in a harsh environment and preserve their unique way of living. Yet, the sheer scale and complexity of Shali invite reflection. How did a community, isolated by hundreds of miles of desert, manage the resources, labor, and organizational knowledge to construct a city of such density and sophistication? Archaeological studies have revealed that Shali was not simply a collection of dwellings, but a carefully orchestrated urban system. Streets were narrow and winding, not only for defensive purposes, but possibly to channel desert winds and provide shade, demonstrating an understanding of environmental adaptation that feels remarkably advanced for the era. Cisterns, wells, and reservoirs were integrated into the city's core, ensuring a steady water supply in a climate where survival depends on mastery of scarce resources. Did the builders develop this knowledge independently, through generations of careful observation, or was it part of a broader, perhaps now lost understanding of desert hydrology and urban planning? The fortress's defensive features further hint at ingenuity and foresight. High walls, bastions, and strategic entrances created a formidable barrier against potential invaders, yet even these designs raise questions. Some passages appear deliberately deceptive, intended to confuse or delay those attempting to penetrate the city. Could there have been additional hidden features, subterranean tunnels, secret chambers, or vantage points that have vanished beneath centuries of erosion and human modification? And what guided the original planners in positioning each wall, tower, and gate with such apparent precision? Shali's material, mud brick fortified with kershef, is itself a source of fascination. Unlike stone, this mixture is both fragile and adaptable, requiring careful maintenance and repair over time. Yet it also allowed builders to create structures that were relatively quick to erect, a critical advantage in a desert environment where survival can be precarious. The fortress's durability over centuries, surviving both human and environmental pressures, suggests an empirical knowledge of material properties that was highly refined. How did ancient builders determine the optimal proportions and construction methods to balance stability with practicality in such a challenging climate? The fortress is not only a marvel of engineering, but also a repository of social and cultural life. Markets, mosques, and communal spaces suggest a city attuned to the rhythms of both daily survival and spiritual practice. The walls and structures carry subtle inscriptions and decorative motifs, whose meanings are partially lost to time. Were these purely aesthetic, or did they encode messages, religious beliefs, or social hierarchies? Some historians speculate that the fortress's layout may reflect principles of sacred geometry or symbolic cosmology, though definitive evidence remains elusive. Could Shali have been designed as much for cultural and spiritual cohesion as for physical protection? Environmental challenges left their mark on Shali as well. In 1926, an unusually heavy rainfall partially destroyed the fortress, demonstrating the vulnerability of mud brick in a desert that rarely experiences such deluges. Yet, even in partial ruin, the city continues to inspire awe and curiosity. How did the original inhabitants adapt over centuries to shifting climatic conditions, resource scarcity, and the pressures of isolation? And what knowledge of sustainability, architecture, and desert survival might have been lost when parts of the city fell to both time and weather? Walking through the remaining alleyways and towers of Shali today, one can almost sense the echoes of life long past. Merchants navigating narrow streets, children playing in courtyards, prayers carried across the city in the heat of midday. The fortress seems alive with memory, yet silent in its enigmas. Every wall, every arch, every fragment of mud brick is a testimony to human perseverance and ingenuity, but also a reminder of how much knowledge may remain beyond reach. Shali Fortress challenges us to consider the limits of human innovation in extreme environments. How did the builders combine architectural skill, environmental knowledge, and social organization to create a city that could endure for centuries in the desert? What methods, insights, or cultural practices have been lost to time, leaving us with only fragments of understanding? And perhaps most intriguingly, what remains hidden beneath the sands, buried by centuries of wind and human activity that might yet reveal new aspects of this remarkable oasis city? As the desert sun dips toward the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the crumbling towers and narrow alleys, Shali stands as a silent testament to human resilience and creativity. It is a place where the practical and the mysterious coexist, where engineering, culture, and survival intertwine in ways that still invite wonder. What secrets remain etched in its walls, hidden in its passages, or lost beneath the sands of the Siwa oasis? Shali endures, a fortress of both stone and enigma, quietly inviting us to ponder the ingenuity and the mysteries of the ancient world. From the windswept sands of the Siwa oasis and the resilient walls of Shali Fortress, our journey turns northeast, following the contours of rugged cliffs and remote plateaus, to a site that rises starkly from the landscape like a sentinel of history, Al-Kahf Castle. Perched high on a rocky outcrop in Syria's Palmyra region, the castle dominates the horizon, its silhouette etched sharply against the desert sky. The approach is daunting. Sheer cliffs plunge into the valleys below, and narrow, winding paths appear to have been carved by human hands to both challenge and deter those who would ascend. Even in its present, partially ruined state, Al-Kahf commands attention, exuding an aura of strength, secrecy, and endurance. Al-Kahf Castle, whose name evokes the cave in Arabic, has a history intertwined with legend, strategic necessity, and human resilience. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site has been occupied intermittently for centuries, serving variously as a fortress, a refuge, and a watchpoint overlooking trade routes and oases that crisscross this unforgiving terrain. Its walls are constructed from locally quarried stone, painstakingly fitted to conform to the irregular contours of the rock beneath, demonstrating a remarkable understanding of both geology and structural engineering. How did the builders manage to blend construction so seamlessly with the natural landscape, creating fortifications that appear almost to grow from the cliffs themselves? The architecture of Al-Kahf Castle is both functional and enigmatic. Narrow staircases wind precariously along the rock face, leading to hidden chambers and terraces. Defensive towers and observation points are strategically positioned to survey the surrounding desert for miles. Yet some interior spaces seem designed for purposes that remain obscure. Were these chambers purely utilitarian, or did they serve ceremonial, administrative, or symbolic functions? Scholars have noted that certain walls and corridors do not align with typical military logic, suggesting a blend of practical defense and deliberate complexity, perhaps intended to confuse intruders or to encode knowledge in ways we have yet to understand. The castle's strategic position is as compelling as its design. Perched between trade routes linking the Syrian interior with Palmyra and beyond, Al-Kahf provided control over movement and resources across the desert. The placement reflects a deep understanding of geography, natural barriers, and human behavior, revealing a society capable of strategic foresight and long-term planning. Yet the fortress also invites questions. How did isolated communities coordinate labor, materials, and logistics to construct such a formidable edifice atop an inaccessible cliff? Could there have been techniques, now lost, that allowed the builders to transport stone and materials up steep gradients, achieving both stability and longevity? Some of the most mysterious aspects of Al-Kahf Castle lie in its hidden spaces and subterranean elements. Explorers and archaeologists have uncovered tunnels, cisterns, and enclosed areas whose full extent and purpose remain uncertain. Water storage was undoubtedly critical in this arid region, yet some chambers appear disproportionately large or located in places that defy easy explanation. Were these purely practical reservoirs, or did they serve additional functions, ritual, administrative, or even symbolic, that are now obscured by centuries of desert erosion and human modification? And what secrets might remain sealed within chambers yet to be explored, concealed by rock or rubble, waiting to reveal new layers of understanding? The castle's resilience is remarkable. Despite centuries of natural wear, sporadic occupation, and occasional conflict, much of the structure remains intact, standing as a testament to the skill and foresight of its builders. How was it possible to achieve such durability with the materials and technology available at the time? Could the fortress's construction reflect knowledge of seismic forces, weight distribution, or material science that is only partially appreciated today? These questions deepen the sense of mystery, suggesting that Al-Kahf is not merely a relic of military strategy, but a monument to ingenuity shaped by the desert's unforgiving conditions. Legends and folklore further cloak the castle in intrigue. Its name evokes tales of hidden caves, secretive monks, or even lost treasures buried within the rock. While historical verification of these stories remains limited, their persistence hints at the cultural and symbolic significance of the site across centuries. Could Al-Kahf have functioned as more than a fortress, a sanctuary, a repository of sacred knowledge, or a focal point of spiritual or communal activity? How much of its story has been lost to time, leaving us only fragments to speculate upon? Walking along the surviving walls today, one can feel the immensity of human effort and imagination embedded in the stone. The cliffs drop sharply into valleys where the desert stretches endlessly, emphasizing the isolation and resilience required to inhabit such a place. The wind whispers through corridors and chambers, carrying echoes of footsteps, prayers, and activity long past, offering fleeting glimpses into the lives of those who labored, defended, and dwelled here. Every arch, every staircase, and every weathered wall serves as a reminder of human determination and ingenuity, and of the mysteries that endure, unspoken, within the fortress. Al-Kahf Castle challenges our understanding of human capability, strategy, and ambition. How did its builders combine architectural skill, environmental insight, and strategic intelligence to create a fortress that could withstand both time and the elements? What knowledge, cultural practices, or innovations might have been preserved within its walls? And what has been irrevocably lost? And perhaps most compellingly, what remains hidden, either buried within rock and rubble, or encoded in the fortress's layout, waiting for future generations to uncover? As the sun sinks low over the Palmyra Desert, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs and weathered battlements of Al-Kahf, the castle seems to hold its breath, suspended between history and legend. It is a place where human ingenuity meets natural majesty, where practical mastery and mystery coexist, and where the desert itself seems to guard secrets we may never fully unveil. Al-Kahf endures, a fortress of stone, sand, and enigma, inviting reflection on the ingenuity, resilience, and hidden knowledge of the civilizations that shaped it, and compelling us to wonder what more the ancient Middle East still holds beneath its timeless horizons. From the cliffs and fortresses of Syria's Palmyra, where Al-Kahf Castle watches over desert valleys like a sentinel of history, our journey moves further south and east into the rugged ochre landscapes of northwestern Saudi Arabia to the ancient settlement of Ula Old Town. Nestled within a dramatic valley carved by millennia of erosion, the town rises like a dream from the desert floor, its labyrinthine streets, mud brick towers, and stone foundations whispering the echoes of countless generations. Even in ruins, Al-Ula exudes an aura of permanence and mystery, as though the very stones remember the lives, rituals, and ambitions of those who once called this place home. Al-Ula Old Town is not merely a settlement. It is a layered archive of human history. Archaeological studies suggest habitation here dates back several millennia, encompassing periods of Nabatean, Lahayanite, and Islamic presence, each leaving tangible traces in the urban fabric. Narrow alleys wind through densely packed homes, some of which rise multiple stories in their original form, while communal squares and small marketplaces hint at a thriving social and economic life. Yet despite centuries of excavation and study, much about the town remains obscure. How did communities in this harsh desert environment organize themselves with such resilience, constructing multi-story dwellings, water systems, and public spaces with limited resources? What cultural, social, or technological knowledge enabled them to thrive where survival itself was a challenge? The town's architecture offers subtle clues to both practicality and sophistication. Mud brick walls, carefully reinforced with stone, demonstrate knowledge of thermal regulation, allowing inhabitants to endure scorching days and cold nights. Roofs were often flat, providing communal spaces and vantage points for observing the surrounding landscape. Some houses were equipped with hidden staircases, storage chambers, and water cisterns, reflecting not only practical ingenuity but a nuanced understanding of security and resource management. Could the design of these structures also carry symbolic or ritual significance, perhaps aligned with celestial events or ancestral traditions that guided daily life? Water management was essential in Al-Ula, and evidence suggests the town's inhabitants developed highly effective systems to capture and store scarce rainfall. Cisterns, wells, and channels indicate an intimate knowledge of the local geology, hydrology, and seasonal patterns. Yet questions linger. Were these systems purely functional, or might they also have played a role in ceremonial life or urban organization? Did the careful placement of communal water sources reflect social hierarchies, religious practices, or long-standing knowledge passed through generations? Trade and connectivity appear to have been central to Al-Ula's endurance. The town lay along routes that linked the Arabian interior with the Red Sea and beyond, facilitating the movement of goods, ideas, and cultural influences. Archaeological evidence shows imported ceramics, inscriptions, and artifacts from distant regions, attesting to a cosmopolitan awareness and engagement. How did a desert settlement maintain such far-reaching connections while remaining isolated by geography? Could the town's planners have developed sophisticated systems for communication, administration, or even navigation that remain partially invisible in the archaeological record? The town's enigmatic allure extends to its urban layout. Streets twist and bend in patterns that appear almost organic, following the contours of the valley and the underlying rock formations. Defensive considerations are evident in elevated vantage points, walls, and narrow passageways, yet some alignments defy straightforward military logic. Were certain streets or building placements determined by religious or symbolic principles, perhaps reflecting cosmological beliefs or sacred geography? Could the entire town have been designed as a living map, encoding knowledge or history into its very layout in a way we are only beginning to glimpse? Artifacts and inscriptions deepen the mystery. Carved stones, fragmented tablets, and architectural motifs hint at a rich cultural and spiritual life, yet their full significance remains elusive. Were these symbols purely decorative, or did they encode knowledge about ancestry, astronomy, or social order? Some researchers speculate that subtle alignments in the town's architecture correspond to celestial events, seasonal cycles, or agricultural calendars. If so, Ula Old Town may have been more than a practical settlement. It could have been a center of observation, ritual, and knowledge, blending the sacred and the mundane in ways we have yet to fully understand. Walking through the ruins today, one can almost hear the whispers of life long past. Merchants trading goods in narrow lanes, children playing in sunlit courtyards, the murmur of prayers and daily routines carried across centuries. The town's walls, towers, and alleys retain an uncanny intimacy, a sense that these structures were not simply built but lived in, adapted, and continuously refined over generations. And yet, so much remains hidden. Collapsed buildings, buried chambers, and artifacts yet to be uncovered hint at layers of history and knowledge that may never be fully revealed. Ula Old Town challenges our understanding of ancient urban resilience, ingenuity, and culture. How did its inhabitants balance survival, community, and spiritual practice in such a harsh environment? What knowledge, architectural, environmental, astronomical, or social, has been lost to time, leaving only fragments for modern explorers to interpret? And perhaps most compellingly, what secrets remain concealed beneath the stones, waiting for patient hands and careful eyes to uncover them? As the desert sun sets over the valley, casting long shadows across mud-brick towers and weathered streets, Ula Old Town stands as both a monument and a mystery. It is a place where human ingenuity meets the harshness of nature, where survival, ritual, and community intersect, and where the past continues to speak in whispers through stone, sand, and silence. What remains hidden within its streets and structures, and how much of the story of human civilization, ingenuity, and resilience in the Arabian desert is still waiting to be discovered? Al-Ula endures, quietly inviting us to wonder. From the ancient streets and towering mud-brick homes of Al-Ula, where the rhythms of human habitation and desert survival intertwine across millennia, our journey takes us southwest across the arid expanse of Egypt's western desert to a lesser-known but equally remarkable site, al-Dabadib. Nestled within the vast Karga oasis, this settlement rises subtly from the desert floor. Its remains a testament to human ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Even in ruins, the structures of al-Dabadib exude a quiet presence, a sense that every stone, wall, and passage was placed with purpose, shaped by necessity, yet echoing ambitions and knowledge that have largely been lost to time. Al-Dabadib was part of the network of settlements and fortifications that dotted Egypt's western desert during the Roman period, roughly in the first few centuries CE. Archaeological excavations reveal a sprawling complex of mud-brick buildings, narrow streets, storage facilities, and small temples, all constructed in close alignment with the desert environment. The town demonstrates careful planning. Houses are clustered around communal areas, while streets and walls provide shade and protection against the punishing sun and wind. But the deeper one studies al-Dabadib, the more questions arise. How did its inhabitants balance everyday survival with architectural ambition in such a remote and unforgiving landscape? What knowledge of climate, materials, and resource management guided the creation of this settlement? Water management is central to the mystery and genius of al-Dabadib. The oasis is fed by underground aquifers, yet the settlement's designers clearly understood how to maximize the availability of this scarce resource. Cisterns, channels, and wells were strategically placed, not only to supply households, but also to irrigate small plots of cultivated land. The careful positioning of these features suggests an intimate knowledge of the desert's hidden hydrology. But how was this knowledge acquired? Was it the product of generations of empirical observation? Or might there have been technical or engineering insights that were carefully preserved within the community and then lost over time? The construction of the town also provokes wonder. Mud brick, reinforced with organic fibers, was shaped into thick walls and multi-roomed homes capable of withstanding seasonal temperature extremes. Roofs were flat and often doubled as working or storage areas, while interior spaces were arranged to provide ventilation and comfort in an otherwise inhospitable climate. Could these architectural choices have incorporated symbolic or social considerations, encoding cultural beliefs or hierarchies into the very layout of the settlement? And what lessons about adaptability and resourcefulness might the builders have understood that modern observers can only begin to speculate upon? Al-Dabadib is not merely a practical settlement. It appears to have been a carefully orchestrated community, with streets, neighborhoods, and public spaces integrated into a coherent plan. Some areas suggest ceremonial or religious activity, with small temples or shrines embedded within residential clusters. Artifacts hint at trade and cultural exchange with distant regions, though the mechanisms of these interactions remain partially obscure. How did such a remote settlement maintain connections with broader networks of commerce, knowledge, and culture? And what role did ritual and spirituality play in guiding the design and daily life of its inhabitants? The desert environment adds another layer of intrigue. Wind and sand have partially buried streets, collapsed walls, and shifted foundations, yet large portions of the town remain remarkably intact, revealing patterns of life, movement, and social organization. Could the resilience of these structures indicate construction techniques lost to time, methods refined through trial, tradition, and perhaps insight that modern archaeology is only beginning to appreciate? And what other secrets might lie hidden beneath layers of sand, waiting to illuminate facets of daily life, technology, or belief systems in ways we cannot yet imagine? Archaeologists are particularly struck by the settlement's combination of isolation and sophistication. Al-Dabadib is simultaneously remote and highly organized, suggesting that its builders possessed not only technical skill, but a capacity for planning, coordination, and foresight that transcends the apparent limitations of a desert outpost. Could the town represent a model of sustainability, an example of how human communities can thrive in extreme environments when knowledge, ingenuity, and social cooperation converge? And if so, what has been lost that could have informed subsequent generations about resilience, resource management, or architectural design? From the remote mud brick streets of al-Dabadib, where ancient ingenuity and desert survival converge in quiet resilience, our journey returns to the banks of the Nile, to the limestone cliffs of Egypt's Theban West Bank. Here, rising dramatically from the valley floor, is Deir el-Bahari, a complex of mortuary temples that seem to defy the natural contours of the cliffs, merging architecture, ritual, and landscape in a way that continues to captivate archaeologists, historians, and travelers alike. The terraces, ramps, and colonnades of this ancient site are carved with precision into the cliffside, their sheer scale and elegance creating an almost surreal harmony with the surrounding desert. Even today, the sun's shifting light animates the stone facades, revealing textures and shadows that speak of centuries of human ambition, devotion, and mystery. Deir el-Bahari is most famously associated with Queen Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs, who reigned during the 15th century BCE. Her mortuary temple dominates the site, rising in tiered terraces linked by ramps and lined with colonnades, each wall adorned with reliefs depicting ceremonial processions, trade expeditions, and divine encounters. The architectural daring is remarkable. Terraces seemingly float against the cliff face, precisely aligned with cardinal points, and oriented to capture the sun's light in ways that may have held ritual or symbolic significance. How did ancient architects achieve such precision, integrating monumental construction with natural features in a landscape that is rugged, uneven, and unforgiving? Beneath the grandeur of the terraces lies further intrigue. Subterranean chambers, chapels, and hidden corridors reveal a sophisticated understanding of both engineering and spiritual symbolism. Some passages are carved deep into the bedrock, their functions not entirely clear. Were they intended for burial, ceremonial practice, or symbolic journeying into the underworld? The alignment of these spaces, combined with the orientation of the terraces and ramps, suggests a knowledge of astronomy, light, and seasonal cycles that is impressive even by modern standards. Could the design of Deir el-Bahari encode layers of meaning lost to contemporary scholarship, combining architecture, cosmology, and ritual in ways we have yet to fully comprehend? Hatshepsut's temple is flanked by smaller mortuary structures and chapels, each adding to the complexity of the site. Evidence suggests that Deir el-Bahari functioned as both a funerary complex and a ceremonial center, blending political power, religious practice, and architectural innovation. Reliefs depict expeditions to distant lands, most famously the voyage to Punt, hinting at networks of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange that extended far beyond the Nile Valley. How did the people of ancient Egypt coordinate such monumental projects, both in terms of labor and logistics, in an era without modern machinery? And what knowledge of materials, geometry, and hydraulics allowed them to integrate these massive structures so seamlessly with the cliffside environment? The site's enduring mysteries extend to its construction methods. Many of the terraces are composed of finely dressed stone, with joints so precise that even modern tools struggle to replicate the work. Ramp systems, retaining walls and platforms display engineering skill that suggests both empirical mastery and possibly theoretical knowledge. Could there have been techniques or principles passed down through generations, now partially lost, that enabled such architectural feats? And what motivated the builders to create terraces that seem almost impossibly perched against the cliffs, combining functionality, symbolism, and aesthetic harmony? The surrounding cliffs themselves deepen the enigma. Natural features were incorporated into the design. Overhangs, rock faces, and slopes became integral to the temple's appearance and structure. Some scholars have speculated that certain terraces or chambers may align with solstices, celestial events, or the rising of sacred stars. If so, the temple might represent not just a funerary complex, but a cosmological instrument, linking the earthly realm to the divine in ways that remain partly opaque. How much of this knowledge was deliberately encoded, and how much emerged organically through trial observation and religious practice? From the remote mud-brick streets of al-Dabadib, where ancient ingenuity and desert survival converge in quiet resilience, our journey returns to the banks of the Nile, to the limestone cliffs of Egypt's Theban West Bank. Here, rising dramatically from the valley floor, is Deir el-Bahari, a complex of mortuary temples that seem to defy the natural contours of the cliffs, merging architecture, ritual, and landscape in a way that continues to captivate archaeologists, historians, and travelers alike. The terraces, ramps, and colonnades of this ancient site are carved with precision into the cliffside, their sheer scale and elegance creating an almost surreal harmony with the surrounding desert. Even today, the sun's shifting light animates the stone facades, revealing textures and shadows that speak of centuries of human ambition, devotion, and mystery. Deir el-Bahari is most famously associated with Queen Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs, who reigned during the 15th century BCE. Her mortuary temple dominates the site, rising in tiered terraces linked by ramps and lined with colonnades, each wall adorned with reliefs depicting ceremonial processions, trade expeditions, and divine encounters. The architectural daring is remarkable. Terraces seemingly float against the cliff face, precisely aligned with cardinal points, and oriented to capture the sun's light in ways that may have held ritual or symbolic significance. How did ancient architects achieve such precision, integrating monumental construction with natural features in a landscape that is rugged, uneven, and unforgiving? Beneath the grandeur of the terraces lies further intrigue. Subterranean chambers, chapels, and hidden corridors reveal a sophisticated understanding of both engineering and spiritual symbolism. Some passages are carved deep into the bedrock, their functions not entirely clear. Were they intended for burial, ceremonial practice, or symbolic journeying into the underworld? The alignment of these spaces, combined with the orientation of the terraces and ramps, suggests a knowledge of astronomy, light, and seasonal cycles that is impressive even by modern standards. Could the design of Deir el-Bahari encode layers of meaning lost to contemporary scholarship, combining architecture, cosmology, and ritual in ways we have yet to fully comprehend? Hatshepsut's temple is flanked by smaller mortuary structures and chapels, each adding to the complexity of the site. Evidence suggests that Deir el-Bahari functioned as both a funerary complex and a ceremonial center, blending political power, religious practice, and architectural innovation. Reliefs depict expeditions to distant lands, most famously the voyage to Punt, hinting at networks of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange that extended far beyond the Nile Valley. How did the people of ancient Egypt coordinate such monumental projects, both in terms of labor and logistics, in an era without modern machinery? And what knowledge of materials, geometry, and hydraulics allowed them to integrate these massive structures so seamlessly with the cliffside environment? The site's enduring mysteries extend to its construction methods. Many of the terraces are composed of finely dressed stone, with joints so precise that even modern tools struggle to replicate the work. Ramp systems, retaining walls, and platforms display engineering skill that suggests both empirical mastery and possibly theoretical knowledge. Could there have been techniques or principles passed down through generations, now partially lost, that enabled such architectural feats? And what motivated the builders to create terraces that seem almost impossibly perched against the cliffs, combining functionality, symbolism, and aesthetic harmony? The surrounding cliffs themselves deepen the enigma. Natural features were incorporated into the design. Overhangs, rock faces, and slopes became integral to the temple's appearance and structure. Some scholars have speculated that certain terraces or chambers may align with solstices, celestial events, or the rising of sacred stars. If so, the temple might represent not just a funerary complex, but a cosmological instrument, linking the earthly realm to the divine in ways that remain partly opaque. How much of this knowledge was deliberately encoded, and how much emerged organically through trial, observation, and religious practice? Deir el-Bahari also invites questions about the broader context of ancient Egyptian mortuary architecture. It differs in style, scale, and integration with the landscape from other nearby mortuary sites, suggesting a period of experimentation and innovation. Was Hatshepsut's temple an exceptional case, or part of a broader, now partially hidden tradition of architectural, astronomical, and spiritual knowledge? And if extraordinary planning and precision were possible here, What other sites might hold secrets that modern archaeology has only begun to glimpse? Walking along the terraces and through the colonnades today, one can feel the layering of time and intention. The faint carvings in stone, the alignment of ramps, and the shadows cast by the cliffs hint at the countless individuals who labored, prayed, and observed in this place. Every wall, every niche, every sculpted relief is a testament to human ambition, skill, and devotion, and also a reminder of how much remains uncertain. What truths about ancient knowledge, ritual practice, and architectural mastery are still buried within the stone and sand of Deir el-Bahari? Deir el-Bahari challenges us to consider the sophistication of ancient civilizations and the mysteries that persist within their monumental works. How did architects integrate terrain, stone, and symbolism with such precision? What insights into astronomy, ritual, and society have been lost, leaving only tantalizing fragments in reliefs and terraces? And perhaps most intriguingly, what remains hidden within the cliffs, chambers, and subterranean spaces of this mortuary complex, waiting to be discovered by patient eyes and careful study? As the Nile Valley sun begins to dip below the horizon, illuminating the terraces of Deir el-Bahari in a warm, golden light, the site stands as a living dialogue between human ambition, natural landscape, and spiritual aspiration. It is a place where engineering, ritual, and mystery converge, inviting us to ponder the ingenuity, knowledge, and secrets of a civilization whose achievements continue to inspire wonder. What lies still concealed within these terraces and chambers, and what can it teach us about the depths of human ingenuity in the ancient Middle East? Deir el-Bahari endures, quietly compelling us to look closer, wonder more deeply, and imagine the knowledge that has yet to be revealed. From the monumental terraces and colonnades of Deir el-Bahari, where architecture, ritual, and landscape converge in extraordinary harmony, our journey moves northward into the fertile yet rugged lands of northern Syria. Here, in the shadow of the Syrian highlands, lie the remains of the ancient temple at Ain Dara, an extraordinary site where stone and symbol intertwine to form some of the most enigmatic reliefs of the ancient Near East. Even today, the weathered carvings, partially buried under centuries of earth and debris, radiate an aura of mystery, as though each etched line carries a fragment of knowledge long lost to time. The Ain Dara temple dates to the Iron Age, approximately the 12th to 8th centuries BCE, yet its scale and artistry rival constructions of far larger civilizations. What immediately captures attention are the reliefs, carved motifs etched into the basalt and limestone floors, walls, and entryways. Lions, sphinxes, and mythological beasts stride across surfaces with a fluidity that conveys both power and grace, guardians of spaces now silent for millennia. Their presence is both familiar and unsettling. Symbols recognizable across the ancient Near East, yet arranged and emphasized here in ways that resist easy interpretation. Why were these figures chosen, and what did they signify to the people who carved them with painstaking care? Were they protective, ceremonial, or symbolic representations of ideas that have since faded from memory? The architecture of Ain Dara further intensifies the intrigue. The temple's footprint is monumental, with a raised platform accessed by carefully constructed steps, large halls framed by pillars, and rooms whose function remains partly speculative. Reliefs are integrated into the structure itself, not simply decorative but possibly functional in guiding movement, ritual, or perception. The main hall, where worship and ceremony likely occurred, is adorned with repeated motifs of lions, symbols of strength, authority, and divine protection. Yet some carvings defy immediate comprehension. Unusual combinations of human, animal, and geometric forms suggest a symbolic language that is tantalizingly incomplete. How much of this visual code can we reconstruct, and how much has been lost to the erosion of both stone and cultural memory? The skill required to carve these reliefs is extraordinary. Basalt, a hard volcanic stone, preserves the fine details of claws, wings, and musculature with remarkable clarity, indicating advanced tools, techniques, and artistic knowledge. Could these methods have been widespread in the region, or were they the product of a specialized class of artisans, their knowledge passed down through generations? And what guided their artistic choices? Purely aesthetic concerns, spiritual symbolism, or an encoded understanding of cosmology and mythology that we can only glimpse today? The temple and its reliefs also raise questions about cultural connections and influence. Scholars have noted parallels between Ain Dara and the temples of Anatolia, Phoenicia, and Mesopotamia, suggesting that ideas, motifs, and perhaps religious practices circulated across great distances. Did the creators of Ain Dara draw from these wider networks consciously? Or did similar symbols emerge independently in response to shared concerns of governance, ritual, and survival? And what does this diffusion, or convergence, tell us about the movement of knowledge, artistry, and belief in the Iron Age Near East? Some reliefs suggest more than guardianship. They hint at ritual, ceremony, or narrative. Carved footprints lead to doorways, rows of lions flank entrances, and celestial or geometric motifs appear in positions that may align with sun, stars, or seasonal events. Was the temple designed as an instrument of observation, a sacred calendar, or a space where the cosmic and the terrestrial intersected in ritual practice? And if so, how much of that knowledge was encoded in ways deliberately subtle, intended only for the initiated, leaving others to experience the power of the space without understanding its deeper symbolism? Time and environment have altered Ain Dara, yet its mysteries endure. Earthquakes, erosion, and human activity have shifted stones and obliterated portions of the temple, yet the surviving reliefs remain remarkably evocative. Their presence sparks questions about permanence and impermanence, about what civilizations choose to record in stone and what remains deliberately hidden or ephemeral. Could there be chambers, floors, or sections buried beneath layers of sediment that contain additional reliefs, inscriptions, or ritual spaces, waiting to expand our understanding of the site? Walking across the temple floor today, one can feel a dialogue between past and present. The reliefs seem to move under the desert sun, the carved lines and shadows animating myth, power, and mystery. Lions crouch as though ready to spring, and sphinxes gaze silently toward horizons no longer visible to the ancients. Each stone seems to whisper a question. What did these images mean to the people who made them, and what knowledge of religion, society, and the cosmos might have been encoded in their design? Ain Dara challenges modern observers to reconsider assumptions about the Iron Age Near East, about art, religion, and symbolism. How sophisticated were the architects and artisans who conceived and executed the temple? What did these figures mean to those who walked the halls millennia ago, and what knowledge, technical, spiritual, or cosmological, was preserved in these carvings that remains hidden to us today? And perhaps most intriguingly, what else lies buried beneath the temple floor, in chambers or stone layers yet unexplored, that could illuminate aspects of culture, belief, and artistic mastery that we cannot now reconstruct? As the Syrian sun casts long shadows over the reliefs, illuminating the curves of paws, wings, and human features, Ain Dara stands as both monument and enigma. It is a place where art, religion, and human ingenuity converge, where the visible and invisible intersect, and where the past continues to pose questions that resist easy answers. What secrets remain hidden within the stone, awaiting discovery? What truths about human belief, creativity, and cultural exchange are still buried, waiting to reveal themselves? Dara endures, quietly compelling us to observe, wonder, and imagine the knowledge that once animated its sacred halls. From the carved stone reliefs and sacred spaces of Dara, where myth, ritual, and artistry intertwine, our journey shifts northeast toward the fertile plains of Upper Mesopotamia. Here, amidst rolling fields and the meandering tributaries that once nourished ancient civilizations, lies Tel Halaf, a site that seems to pulse with echoes of human settlement stretching back over 6 millennia. Rising modestly from the surrounding landscape, the Tel, or mound, appears unremarkable at first glance. Yet beneath its earthen surface lies a remarkable record of human ingenuity, artistry, and cultural exchange, a silent witness to the rhythms of life, trade, and ritual in an era shrouded in mystery. Tel Halaf is perhaps best known for the monumental statues and architectural fragments uncovered during excavations in the early 20th century. Carved from basalt and limestone, these sculptures depict winged figures, sphinxes, and deities whose forms convey both power and grace. The artistry is extraordinary. Fine lines capture musculature and gesture, while symbolic elements suggest layers of meaning beyond the immediately visible. Who were the people who created these figures, and what knowledge guided their craft? Were these monumental representations purely religious, protective, or ceremonial, or did they encode ideas about society, politics, and cosmology that we are only beginning to grasp? Archaeological evidence indicates that Tel Halaf was a major center during the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, with habitation dating back to the 6th millennium BCE. The site reveals complex urban planning, with clustered dwellings, fortified structures, and specialized production areas. Pottery, tools, and decorative motifs suggest sophisticated techniques and a rich cultural life. Yet many aspects of daily life remain elusive. How did these early communities sustain themselves, organize labor, and maintain social cohesion in a landscape simultaneously generous and challenging? What forms of knowledge, architectural, agricultural, or symbolic, were necessary to thrive in this environment, and what has been lost over millennia? The Tel itself raises questions about human interaction with the landscape. Its layered construction indicates repeated occupation, rebuilding, and adaptation, a palimpsest of civilizations responding to changing climates, resources, and social structures. Could the Tel's form itself hold meaning, functioning as both practical habitation and symbolic statement, a deliberate elevation linking earth, sky, and community in ways we have yet to fully decode? And what secrets might lie within the mound, buried beneath centuries of sediment and stone, waiting to reveal hidden chambers, artifacts, or inscriptions? The monumental statues and reliefs hint at a society deeply invested in both protection and symbolism. Winged figures guard entrances, sphinxes flank ceremonial spaces. Their stylized forms are familiar across the ancient Near East, yet the specific combinations, poses, and inscriptions at Tel Halaf are unique. Why did these artisans choose such representations, and what messages were they intended to convey? Were these symbols protective, aspirational, or cosmological, and how much of their significance has been obscured by time, loss, and interpretation through modern lenses? Tel Halaf also suggests far-reaching cultural connections. Excavations have revealed artifacts and motifs resonating with sites in Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and the Levant, implying networks of exchange, influence, and shared knowledge. How were such connections maintained over hundreds of kilometers in an era without modern transport or communication? Did ideas travel alongside goods, embedding cosmology, ritual practice, and artistic innovation in settlements across the region? And how much of the site's design and artistic program was influenced by these interactions, versus local traditions developed independently over generations. The mystery deepens in the details. Relief fragments indicate ritual spaces, possibly altars or shrines, whose full function is still debated. Some architectural alignments suggest intentional orientation toward celestial phenomena, though the evidence is fragmentary. Could Tel Halaf have served not only as a habitation center, but also as a ceremonial or cosmological hub, a place where human and divine, terrestrial and celestial, intersected in structured ritual? If so, what knowledge guided these constructions, and how was it preserved, transmitted, and ultimately obscured? Walking through the site today, one senses a dialogue between time, labor, and imagination. The fragments of statues, the remnants of walls, and the uneven mounds evoke centuries of human activity, yet also a profound silence, the unspoken stories of communities that shaped the place. Each stone and carving hints at intent, mastery, and cultural sophistication. And yet, for all we know, much remains hidden beneath layers of earth, waiting for patient excavation and careful analysis to reveal insights about technology, artistry, and belief systems long forgotten. Tel Halaf challenges our understanding of early urbanization, artistry, and symbolic thought in the ancient Near East. How did communities so long ago develop techniques for monumental sculpture, complex settlement planning, and symbolic communication? What knowledge, spiritual understanding, or social structures guided their choices, and how much of that has been lost to the passage of time? And perhaps most compellingly, what remains buried beneath the Tel itself, in stone, earth, and hidden spaces, that might reveal new dimensions of human ingenuity, culture, and mystery? As the sun casts long shadows across the gently sloping mound of Tel Halaf, the site stands as a quiet testament to the skill, imagination, and resilience of ancient communities. It is a place where art, ritual, and urban life intersect, where the visible and hidden combine, and where the past continues to pose questions without definitive answers. What lies still concealed within the layers of this Tel, waiting to illuminate forgotten chapters of human history and the mysteries of the ancient Middle East? Tel Halaf endures, quietly inviting us to look deeper, wonder more profoundly, and imagine the knowledge still hidden beneath its soil. From the layered mounds and monumental reliefs of Tel Halaf, where human artistry and urban ingenuity reach into the distant past, our journey turns northwest toward the rugged highlands of southeastern Turkey. Rising dramatically from the surrounding plains is Nemrut Dağı, or Mount Nemrut, a mountain whose summit conceals a surreal and enigmatic world. Jagged cliffs and scree slopes lead to a plateau seemingly sculpted by human hands and celestial ambition, where colossal statues peer across the horizon, their silent gaze fixed on realms both terrestrial and divine. Even from a distance, the summit appears otherworldly, a place where stone, sky, and imagination converge in a spectacle that has perplexed travelers, scholars, and explorers for centuries. Nemrut Dağı is perhaps best known for the monumental tomb sanctuary of King Antiochus I of Commagene, who ruled in the 1st century BCE. The site is remarkable not only for its scale, but for the audacious vision it embodies. Terraces of stone, colossal seated figures of gods and the king himself, and intricately carved reliefs that rise from the mountaintop, framed by the vastness of sky and distant mountains. These statues, often over 8 meters tall, are fragmented now, their heads displaced yet preserved in solemn majesty. How did artisans achieve such precision and scale atop a remote mountain, with tools and resources limited by the rugged terrain and thin air? What knowledge, engineering, artistic, and logistical, was required to construct a site that would endure millennia under harsh climatic conditions? The design of Nemrut Dağı is infused with symbolism and celestial intent. The arrangement of the statues along the eastern and western terraces suggests careful attention to the sun's path, possibly aligning with solstices and equinoxes. Reliefs depict a complex pantheon, merging Persian, Greek, and Armenian deities alongside Antiochus himself, projecting both political authority and divine legitimacy. What motivated this fusion of cultural and religious imagery, and how was it understood by the contemporary population? Was the site intended primarily as a funerary monument, a ritual center, or a statement of cosmic and temporal order? And if celestial alignment was intentional, what astronomical knowledge guided its conception? The colossal heads, now displaced from their bodies, add another layer of mystery. Their expressions are enigmatic, some serene, others commanding, their faces frozen in time, yet each with a subtle individuality that hints at mastery of both observation and artistry. Could these sculptures have served a dual purpose, representing human authority while also embodying divine or cosmic principles? And why, despite their grandeur, were the heads deliberately separated from the bodies, a result of natural forces, human intervention, or intentional ritual fragmentation? The terraces themselves reveal meticulous planning. Stone blocks are quarried, shaped, and arranged in ways that suggest both structural knowledge and aesthetic consideration. Channels, platforms, and stairways indicate careful orchestration of movement, perspective, and ritual activity. Could the layout of Nemrut Dağı also encode a symbolic journey, guiding visitors through experiences of power, devotion, and celestial observation? And if so, what stories, myths, or cosmic principles were embedded in the very stones of the summit, waiting for those capable of reading their subtle cues? Nemrut Dağı also invites reflection on the human relationship with landscape and environment. The summit rises nearly 2,200 meters above sea level, exposed to extreme temperature fluctuations, wind, and seismic activity. Constructing such a monumental site in this setting would have demanded not only technical skill, but extraordinary determination and foresight. How were materials transported, labor coordinated, and architectural precision maintained in such a remote and hostile environment? Could techniques or knowledge now lost have facilitated the builders' remarkable achievements, leaving traces we can only infer from the surviving structures? The site's enigmatic inscriptions further complicate our understanding. Carved in Greek, these texts proclaim Antiochus's lineage, religious devotion, and vision of cosmic harmony. Yet their intended audience, their deeper philosophical or theological implications, and the ways in which they were integrated with ritual practice remain partly opaque. Was Nemrut Dağı conceived as a statement of personal legacy, a theological manifesto, or a broader cultural experiment bridging East and West? And what knowledge or beliefs did Antiochus hope to preserve, encoded in stone and intended to endure far beyond his own lifetime? Walking among the shattered statues, terraces, and reliefs today, one can sense both grandeur and fragility, a dialogue between human ambition and the relentless forces of nature. The wind carries faint echoes of ancient ceremony, while the shadows of colossal heads stretch across the summit at sunrise and sunset, animating figures carved thousands of years ago. Every fragment, every displaced stone, and every inscription invites contemplation of human ingenuity, devotion, and the desire to leave a lasting imprint on both earth and sky. Nemrut Dağı challenges our understanding of ancient culture, engineering, and spirituality. How did Antiochus and his artisans blend artistic vision, political ambition, and cosmic awareness into a single mountaintop complex? What knowledge, astronomical, architectural, or ritual, guided the construction of terraces and alignment of colossal figures? And perhaps most intriguingly, What secrets remain hidden in the summit's stones, terraces, or subterranean chambers, waiting to reveal more about the ambitions, beliefs, and ingenuity of a civilization that once sought to connect the earthly and divine? As the sun dips behind distant peaks, casting long shadows across the terraces of Nemrut Dağı, the mountain exudes a timeless stillness. It is a place where human imagination, devotion, and ambition converge with the harsh majesty of nature, where the remnants of gods and kings silently witness the passage of centuries. What knowledge, what cosmic insights, and what secrets of ancient ingenuity remain concealed within this mountaintop sanctuary, still awaiting discovery? Nemrut Dağı endures, a monumental enigma, inviting contemplation, awe, and profound curiosity about the mysteries of the ancient Middle East. From the majestic mountaintop terraces and colossal statues of Nemrut Dağı, where human ambition reaches skyward and blends with the celestial, our journey turns southeast into the rolling plains of southwestern Iran. Here, among gentle hills and the remains of once thriving trade routes, lie the ruins of Bishapur, a city that stands as both testament and enigma, revealing layers of human ingenuity, artistry, and political ambition. Today, the site is quiet, its stone streets and carved reliefs partially reclaimed by time, wind, and the elements. Yet even in its ruin, Bishapur radiates a presence, a reminder of an empire that sought to leave its mark not only on the land, but on the imagination. Founded in the 3rd century CE during the reign of Shapur I of the Sasanian Empire, Bishapur was conceived as a showcase of imperial authority, urban sophistication, and artistic achievement. Its streets, paved with stone and laid out in a distinct grid, suggest careful urban planning, while monumental gateways, palaces, and temples reflect both function and grandeur. The city was adorned with reliefs carved directly into cliffs, depicting royal victories, court ceremonies, and mythological figures. These reliefs are striking in both scale and detail, combining naturalistic depictions of human and animal forms with symbolic imagery designed to convey power, legitimacy, and divine favor. How did artisans and planners achieve such precision and elegance in a landscape that, though fertile, posed logistical challenges? What knowledge, architectural, artistic, and engineering, was required to translate imperial vision into stone and city plan? The rock reliefs at Bishapur are particularly compelling. Some depict Shapur I triumphing over Roman emperors, his horse rearing majestically, while captives are shown in poses of submission and defeat. The carvings are both celebratory and propagandistic, yet they also offer glimpses of symbolic language that remains partly opaque. Did these reliefs serve purely political purposes, or might they have carried ritual, cosmological, or spiritual meaning as well? Could the placement of these images within the city and along roads have been carefully calculated to convey layered messages to those who traveled through Bishapur, blending observation, awe, and ideological instruction? The urban design itself deepens the mystery. Bishapur was constructed with a clear grid pattern, incorporating avenues, residential quarters, public squares, and ceremonial spaces. Some scholars suggest that the city's orientation and alignment may reflect astronomical considerations or cosmological symbolism, though evidence remains inconclusive. Was the planning of Bishapur purely functional, aimed at efficiency and administration, or did it also encode spiritual or ritual principles connecting the earthly city with the heavens above? And if so, what knowledge guided these decisions, and how was it transmitted within the empire? Beyond the monumental reliefs and city plan, Bishapur demonstrates remarkable sophistication in construction and material use. Stone, mud brick, and baked brick were combined to create structures capable of enduring earthquakes and seasonal variations, while intricate drainage systems reveal an understanding of hydrology that supported both urban life and agriculture. Could techniques employed here reflect knowledge passed down through generations, now lost to time? And what other innovations, technological, administrative, or artistic, might remain hidden within foundations, walls, or unexcavated layers of the city? Bishapur also speaks to cultural exchange and synthesis. The city's art and architecture reveal influences from Roman, Persian, and local traditions, suggesting a deliberate fusion of styles to convey both universality and imperial uniqueness. How did these diverse elements interact, and to what extent were they adapted to local beliefs, resources, or environmental constraints? Could the city itself be understood as a laboratory of cultural and artistic experimentation, designed to project a message of unity and power while preserving older traditions? Walking among the ruins today, one is struck by the layering of human intention and natural forces. Streets long abandoned still trace roots across the landscape, while carved reliefs remain partially intact, bearing silent witness to ceremonies, triumphs, and civic life that spanned centuries. Each stone, each carving, each fragment of brick is a testament to a civilization that sought permanence, legacy, and perhaps a touch of the divine. Yet for all that is visible, much remains hidden. Chambers yet unexcavated, inscriptions partially buried, and structural complexities obscured by centuries of erosion. What knowledge, what artistry, and what stories lie still concealed beneath the ruins of Bishapur, waiting to illuminate the sophistication of Sasanian urban and cultural achievement? Bishapur challenges modern observers to reconsider assumptions about ancient urbanism, political expression, and artistic mastery. How did a city, constructed nearly 2 millennia ago, integrate monumental art, precise urban planning, and functional design in a way that both served practical needs and projected ideological power? What knowledge, technical, cultural, or spiritual, has been lost, leaving only tantalizing traces for us to study and interpret? And perhaps most intriguingly, what mysteries still remain buried, waiting to reveal themselves to those who explore the site with patience, skill, and curiosity? As the sun dips behind the hills surrounding Bishapur, casting long shadows across stone streets, gates, and reliefs, the city exudes a quiet grandeur. It is a place where human ambition, artistry, and ingenuity intersect with the passage of time, a monument to a civilization whose full depth remains only partially understood. What lies still hidden within its ruins, and what can it teach us about the people, ideas, and knowledge that shaped one of the most remarkable empires of the ancient Middle East? Bishapur endures, silently inviting us to look deeper, question more profoundly, and imagine the layers of mystery still buried within its stones. From the carefully planned streets and monumental reliefs of Bishapur, where imperial ambition and artistry intertwine, our journey carries us eastward into the alluvial plains of southern Mesopotamia. Here, near the banks of the Euphrates, rise the remains of one of the most iconic and enigmatic structures of the ancient world, the Ziggurat of Ur. Even today, its massive terraces, receding in steps toward the sky, command the landscape with an authority that speaks of devotion, political power, and engineering mastery. Despite centuries of erosion, looting, and reconstruction, the ziggurat's monumental presence remains striking, evoking both awe and curiosity in all who encounter it. Constructed during the reign of Ur-Nammu in the 21st century BCE, the Ziggurat of Ur was dedicated to Nana, the moon god, a deity of immense importance in the city-state of Ur. Unlike ordinary buildings, the ziggurat was designed not simply for habitation, but as a bridge between the human and divine, a stairway of stone ascending toward the heavens. Its core of mud brick is faced with baked brick, carefully bonded with bitumen, forming terraces that rise in tiers, creating a monumental step-like pyramid. How did architects, builders, and laborers coordinate such a feat in an era without modern tools or machinery? What knowledge of materials, foundation engineering, and structural load allowed a mud brick monument of such scale to endure millennia in a flood-prone landscape? The sheer scale of the ziggurat suggests not only technical skill but deep symbolic intention. Each terrace, each stairway, and each platform may have had ritual significance, guiding priests, worshippers, or rulers in a carefully choreographed ascent toward the temple at the summit. What ceremonies might have unfolded here, and how did the architecture enhance or enforce spiritual experience? Could the alignment of the terraces with celestial events, moon phases, solstices, or star risings, have been deliberate, embedding astronomical knowledge into the very stones of the structure? And if so, how sophisticated was the understanding of astronomy possessed by the builders, now largely lost to time? Beyond its physical construction, the Ziggurat of Ur challenges our understanding of social organization and labor. Constructing such a monumental site would have required vast human resources, coordination, and knowledge of supply chains for materials such as mud brick, bitumen, and fired brick. What systems were in place to mobilize and sustain the workforce, and how were expertise, ritual knowledge, and technical skill transmitted across generations to ensure successful execution? Was the monument primarily a spiritual endeavor, a display of political authority, or a combination of both? And how did the community interact with the ziggurat on a daily basis, integrating sacred architecture into the rhythms of life in the city? The temple at the summit, now largely destroyed, adds another layer of mystery. Archaeological evidence suggests it contained shrines, offering spaces, and possibly chambers for priests or sacred objects. What rituals were conducted within these uppermost rooms? And what role did the ziggurat play in connecting the people of Ur to their gods? Could the stairways themselves have been considered sacred paths, allowing movement from the mundane toward the divine, a journey of both physical ascent and spiritual elevation? The Ziggurat of Ur also invites reflection on its enduring impact and the cultural memory of monumental architecture. Its form is echoed across Mesopotamia and beyond, influencing subsequent temple design for centuries. Yet the knowledge required to construct such edifices seems to have been largely lost after the decline of the Sumerian civilization. How was this knowledge recorded, transmitted, and ultimately obscured by the passage of time? And what other structures, smaller temples, shrines, or ceremonial complexes, might remain buried beneath the plain, containing clues to rituals, technologies, and societal structures now invisible to us? Walking among the terraces today, one senses a dialogue between human ambition and environmental constraints. The mud brick core and baked brick facade endure as a testament to engineering, planning, and religious devotion, yet they also remind us of fragility and impermanence. Wind, rain, and human intervention have eroded parts of the structure, and yet the ziggurat's presence continues to dominate the landscape, inviting reflection on how civilizations sought to materialize spiritual and political authority. What might further excavation reveal about hidden chambers, inscriptions, or artifacts that could illuminate the ziggurat's full function and significance? The site also prompts larger questions about the relationship between humans, gods, and architecture in the ancient Middle East. How did the builders conceptualize space, scale, and movement to create an environment where ritual, power, and spirituality intersected so seamlessly? Could the ziggurat have been intended as a cosmogram, a representation of the heavens on earth, a tangible reflection of celestial order? And if so, how much knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and symbolism was encoded into its stones, knowledge that may have influenced subsequent civilizations in ways we are only beginning to understand? As the sun sets over the plains of southern Iraq, casting long shadows across terraces and stairways, the Ziggurat of Ur endures as a monument to human ingenuity, ambition, and devotion. Its massive steps and monumental presence invite contemplation of the technological, spiritual, and social knowledge required to create such a structure, while also reminding us of the mysteries that remain unsolved. What lies still hidden within its core, under layers of earth and brick, waiting to illuminate aspects of Sumerian life, cosmology, and engineering that have eluded us for millennia. The Ziggurat of Ur stands, silently compelling us to look deeper, question more profoundly, and imagine the knowledge that remains concealed in one of the most extraordinary monuments of the ancient Middle East. From the monumental steps and sacred terraces of the Ziggurat of Ur, where mud brick and baked brick once reached toward the heavens in devotion to the moon, god Nana, our journey moves south along the lifeline of the Nile to the city of Luxor, the ancient Thebes. Here, sprawled across the banks of the Nile, stands the Karnak Temple complex, a sprawling labyrinth of stone sanctuaries, pylons, and obelisks, whose colossal scale and intricate design have both awed and perplexed travelers for millennia. Even today, Karnak exudes a presence that seems to surpass the ordinary, as if the stones themselves hum with the rituals, prayers, and ambitions of countless generations. Karnak is not a single temple, but a vast network of precincts dedicated primarily to Amun-Ra, the king of the gods, along with his consort Mut and their son Khonsu. The complex was built over more than 2 millennia, from the Middle Kingdom through the Ptolemaic period, with successive pharaohs adding layers of construction, sculpture, and decoration. The result is a kaleidoscope of architectural styles, inscriptions, and monuments, all coexisting in a complex hierarchy of space and function. How did the ancient architects integrate such a vast and evolving project with coherent symbolism, ritual use, and structural integrity? What knowledge guided the construction of enormous pylons, hypostyle halls, and obelisks, some carved from single stones weighing hundreds of tons? One of the most striking features of Karnak is the Great Hypostyle Hall, with its 134 massive columns, each intricately carved with hieroglyphs and reliefs depicting pharaohs, gods, and ritual ceremonies. Walking among these towering pillars today, it is easy to feel dwarfed by both their size and their historical weight. Could the arrangement of columns and the orientation of the hall have been designed with astronomical or acoustic purposes in mind? Some researchers have speculated that the hypostyle hall amplifies sound in ways that would enhance chanting or ritual performance, though evidence is still inconclusive. What role might these sensory dimensions have played in the experience of worship? And how much knowledge of physics and material properties did the builders possess? Obelisks rise from the temple floor like stone arrows piercing the sky, their inscriptions praising pharaohs and commemorating victories. These monoliths, quarried, shaped, and transported with extraordinary effort, suggest a mastery of engineering and coordination rarely matched in antiquity. How were these enormous stones moved and erected with such precision without modern machinery? Were there lost techniques, methods of leverage, or knowledge of mechanics now unknown, enabling the ancients to achieve feats that continue to inspire awe? And beyond the technical, what symbolic weight did these obelisks carry, representing both divine favor and pharaonic authority? The walls of Karnak are covered in a vast pictorial and textual record. Reliefs depict religious festivals, battles, divine interactions, and even scenes of daily life. Some images, however, remain cryptic. Unusual hieroglyphs, enigmatic motifs, and rarely seen deities invite speculation. Were these symbols purely decorative, or did they encode secret knowledge of ritual, astronomy, or cosmology, intended only for the initiated? Could parts of the complex have functioned as repositories of sacred or esoteric wisdom, carefully guarded by priests and rulers alike? Water, too, played a role in the temple's design and ritual use. Canals and pools within Karnak suggest an intimate relationship with the Nile, both practical and symbolic, perhaps representing the primordial waters of creation. Was the temple layout deliberately aligned with the river's flood cycle, or with celestial events to synchronize earthly and divine rhythms? If so, what observational knowledge and astronomical calculations informed these decisions, and how did they guide ceremonial practice? Karnak also raises questions about social organization, labor, and the transmission of knowledge. Constructing and maintaining such an enormous complex required a coordinated workforce, skilled artisans, and careful logistical planning over centuries. How were techniques, rituals, and architectural methods transmitted across generations, preserving coherence despite long intervals and multiple dynasties? And what cultural, religious, or political imperatives sustained such monumental effort over centuries, creating a complex that was both living temple and eternal monument? Walking through Karnak today, one senses a layering of time, devotion, and ambition. The worn steps, colossal statues, and carved reliefs are not merely remnants of a past civilization. They are traces of human ingenuity, religious devotion, and aesthetic vision, frozen yet still alive in the imagination. Each shadow cast by a towering pylon, each glint of sunlight on a carved obelisk, evokes the countless rituals performed here and the centuries of human presence that shaped this sacred landscape. Karnak challenges modern observers to contemplate the intersection of technology, spirituality, and political power in the ancient world. How did the Egyptians conceptualize and construct spaces capable of inspiring awe, encoding religious knowledge, and projecting authority? What knowledge, techniques, and symbolic intentions remain hidden within the stones, inscriptions, and spatial arrangement of the temple complex? And most intriguingly, what secrets have yet to be uncovered? Chambers, inscriptions, or ritual spaces that might reveal dimensions of Egyptian thought, cosmology, and human ingenuity still inaccessible to us today. As the sun sets over the temples and pylons, casting long shadows across the colonnades and open courtyards, Karnak endures as both monument and mystery. It is a place where human devotion, artistry, and ambition converge with natural light and landscape, where the visible and invisible intertwine, and where the past continues to pose questions that resist definitive answers. What remains concealed within its vast stone walls, waiting to reveal the depth of human knowledge, belief, and imagination in one of the most extraordinary sacred complexes of the ancient Middle East? Karnak Temple stands, silently inviting contemplation, wonder, and discovery. From the monumental columns, sanctuaries, and sacred spaces of Karnak, where devotion and human ingenuity converge on a grand scale, our journey moves north into the arid plains of the Upper Euphrates in modern-day Syria. Here lies Tel Abu Hureyra, a site that may at first seem modest compared to the towering monuments of Egypt, yet it holds an extraordinary significance. It is among the earliest known settlements where humanity made the profound transition from hunting and gathering to farming. The Tel rises gently from the surrounding landscape, a subtle mound of earth and stone, its layers concealing thousands of years of human history. Walking its contours today, one can almost feel the echoes of the earliest experiments in cultivation and settlement, a whisper of a revolution that would shape the course of civilization. Excavations reveal that Tel Abu Hureyra was inhabited as far back as 13,000 years ago, during the Epipaleolithic period, when small groups of hunter-gatherers established temporary camps along the fertile banks of the Euphrates. Over centuries, these camps evolved into more permanent settlements, and the inhabitants began to cultivate rye and einkorn wheat, alongside managing wild sheep and goats. This was not a simple or inevitable shift. It represented a profound transformation in human relationship with the environment. What knowledge and observation allowed these early communities to recognize which plants could be domesticated, and how did they experiment with techniques that would eventually sustain larger populations? The layers of occupation at Tel Abu Hureyra reveal remarkable ingenuity. Hearths, storage pits, and post holes speak of complex domestic organization, while the presence of tools, grinding stones, and early agricultural implements suggests a deep understanding of local ecology. Yet many aspects remain elusive. How did these early farmers adapt to the cyclical flooding of the Euphrates, the shifting patterns of wild game, and the vagaries of climate? Could subtle environmental cues or oral traditions have guided their experimentation, preserving knowledge that allowed successive generations to refine techniques of planting, harvesting, and animal management? One of the most compelling mysteries of Tel Abu Hureyra lies in its role during a period of dramatic climate change. Around 10,800 BCE, the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions, brought cold, aridity, and instability to the region. Yet the settlement endured, and its inhabitants adapted, accelerating the domestication of plants and animals. How did early communities survive such environmental stress? And to what extent did necessity drive innovation? Did they develop strategies of storage, selection, or communal organization that remain hidden in the archaeological record? The Tell invites reflection on resilience, experimentation, and the emergence of strategies that would underpin human civilization. The site also offers tantalizing glimpses into symbolic and social life. Fragmentary figurines, decorated tools, and potential ritual spaces suggest that alongside survival and agriculture, early humans engaged in cultural and spiritual expression. Did these early villagers have belief systems tied to the land, the cycles of growth, or celestial patterns? Could ritual or symbolic practice have influenced agricultural techniques, social cohesion, or transmission of knowledge? And if so, how much of this understanding has been lost to time, leaving only fragments and faint traces for modern interpretation? Archaeological evidence at Tel Abu Hureyra also challenges assumptions about the pace of technological and social development. The site demonstrates the emergence of permanent structures, storage facilities, and increasingly complex social organization within relatively short spans of time. What drove this acceleration, and what knowledge networks or observational techniques were necessary to manage such early urbanization? Could there have been forms of experimentation, communication, or learning now lost, which enabled these communities to transform themselves and their environment with such profound efficiency? Walking among the remnants of ancient hearths and foundations today, one can sense both fragility and persistence. The layers of occupation, each a delicate testimony to human ingenuity and adaptation, tell a story of trial, error, and incremental mastery over the environment. Every flint tool, charred seed, and post hole represents observation, experimentation, and the conscious effort to shape the natural world into a sustainable home. Yet, for all we know, much remains buried: secrets of social organization, agricultural innovation, or symbolic practice that could redefine our understanding of humanity's earliest steps toward civilization. Tel Abu Hureyra also invites contemplation of the broader implications of early settlement. How did these first farmers perceive their place in the landscape, and what knowledge guided their decisions? Did they recognize patterns in climate, soil, or water that allowed them to thrive? And how was this knowledge transmitted within their community? Could remnants of their understanding, encoded in seed selection, construction methods, or ritual practice, shed light on the origins of agriculture and the rise of human societies across the Middle East? As the sun dips across the Euphrates plains, casting long shadows over the subtle mound of Tel Abu Hureyra, the site exudes a quiet, almost intangible presence. It is a place where the earliest human attempts to tame nature, create permanence, and explore the boundaries of survival and culture took root. And yet, for all that has been uncovered, the tell remains a layered enigma. What knowledge lies still buried beneath its earth, waiting to illuminate the ingenuity, experimentation, and mysteries of humanity's first farmers? Tell Abu Hureyra endures, silently inviting us to look deeper, question more profoundly, and imagine the worlds hidden within its ancient soils. As the sun dips low over the rolling desert plains of eastern Jordan, the ruins of Qasr al-Hallabat emerge from the sands, bathed in a golden, almost otherworldly light. The fortress, its walls composed of sun-baked stone and reinforced brick, stands quietly against the wind, a solemn sentinel of a time long past. From a distance it appears deceptively simple, yet the closer one moves, the more intricate its architecture becomes. Arched gateways leading into shadowed courtyards, towers rising unevenly, and stone inscriptions that hint at stories we can only partially reconstruct. Here, in this seemingly remote and inhospitable stretch of desert, history and mystery converge, whispering of civilizations that once thrived but left behind more questions than answers. Qasr al-Hallabat is part of a network of desert castles scattered across Jordan, often attributed to the early Islamic Umayyad period of the 8th century. Scholars have long debated their purpose. Some argue they were fortified agricultural estates designed to manage and protect farmland in the arid landscape. Others see them as military outposts, part of a defensive chain stretching across the frontier of the Umayyad Caliphate. Yet, as one stands within the crumbling walls, it is difficult not to feel that their story is far richer, and perhaps far stranger, than these conventional explanations allow. The castle itself is layered with history. Beneath its Umayyad brickwork lie the remnants of Roman baths and foundations, evidence that this site had long been valued for its strategic location and perhaps for its access to hidden water sources. The Roman influence is unmistakable in the remains of its bathhouses, with their precise engineering, underground channels, and heating systems. Yet, it is the later Umayyad additions, ornate stone carvings, decorative arches, and a sense of scale that seems almost ceremonial, that lend the site an air of enigmatic purpose. Why, in the middle of an otherwise barren desert, would such architectural elegance be lavished upon a place that seems so remote? Some researchers suggest that Qasr al-Hallabat, like other desert castles, functioned as a seasonal retreat for Umayyad elites, a place to escape the growing urban centers and indulge in hunting or leisure. Others speculate that it served a more spiritual role, a location for rituals or gatherings, bridging Roman pagan traditions with early Islamic cultural practices. The geometric precision of its layout, the alignment of walls, and the careful orientation of its gates hint at knowledge and intention beyond mere practicality. Could it be that this fortress was designed not only for habitation or defense, but also for a purpose that modern historians struggle to define? Walking through the expansive courtyard, one cannot ignore the sense of mystery embedded in the quiet symmetry and isolation. The air carries a stillness that feels almost deliberate, as if the desert itself is guarding secrets that cannot be rushed. In the corners of the ruins, faint traces of inscriptions suggest messages or records long faded. What stories were written here, and for whom were they intended? Who walked these paths centuries ago, and what did they hope to preserve or conceal? Fringe theories about Qasr al-Hallabat abound. Some suggest that these desert castles were ancient centers of knowledge or esoteric wisdom, perhaps repositories of celestial observation or early scientific experimentation, blending astrology, engineering, and sacred geometry. Others have proposed that the architectural patterns indicate a lost connection between distant civilizations, linking the Middle East with regions as far afield as Mesopotamia or even Egypt in ways that conventional history cannot fully explain. Could the seemingly utilitarian baths and storerooms have concealed hidden chambers, tools, or texts, their presence erased by the relentless sands of time? Even the natural environment adds to the enigma. The castle sits near the Hera Desert lava fields, a landscape both striking and forbidding. The harshness of this terrain makes the settlement of such a structure all the more remarkable, raising questions about the resources, labor, and knowledge required to construct and maintain it. How did its builders manage water supply, food storage, and defensive needs in such an isolated setting? Were there purposes here that went beyond the obvious, perhaps ritualistic or symbolic, connected to the cycles of nature or the stars overhead? Archaeologists continue to puzzle over the layered history of the site. Excavations have uncovered Roman coins, Umayyad ceramics, and traces of Byzantine influence, suggesting a continuity of occupation and significance spanning centuries. Yet, despite these tangible artifacts, a fundamental question remains. What was the full intention behind Qasr al-Hallabat? Was it a palace, a fortress, a ceremonial complex, or something else entirely? And if some of its secrets were deliberately encoded into its very design, how much have we already overlooked? As dusk deepens, casting elongated shadows across the crumbling walls and sun-baked floors, one is left with a profound sense of wonder. Qasr al-Hallabat does not yield its stories easily. It asks for patience, for observation, for an openness to the possibility that not all knowledge is neatly recorded or understood. Its presence reminds us that history is not always a straightforward narrative. Sometimes it is a puzzle, partially revealed, with missing pieces that invite speculation and imagination. Here, in the quiet company of stone and sand, the line between the known and the unknown blurs. Every carved relief, every weathered archway, seems to whisper a question rather than offer an answer. What truths lie hidden beneath these ruins, waiting for discovery, or perhaps forever beyond our reach? The mystery of Qasr al-Hallabat endures, not in the certainty of facts, but in the lingering questions that continue to draw us into its silent, enigmatic world. The soft light of the morning sun spills across rolling hills, revealing a city frozen in time, its stones whispering tales from more than 2 millennia ago. Jerash, once known as Gerasa, sits in the northern reaches of Jordan, a place where history and mystery intertwine in the dust-laden air. The ruins rise like spectral echoes of a bygone era, rows of columns stretching toward the sky, arches that frame the horizon, and wide avenues that once carried the rhythm of bustling merchants and armored soldiers. At first glance, it is an impressive monument to Roman urban planning and architectural mastery. Yet, as one walks its ancient streets, a subtle question lingers. How did a city of such sophistication come to flourish so far from the empire's traditional centers, and what secrets might its ruins still conceal? Entering through the south gate, visitors are greeted by the Cardo Maximus, a paved colonnaded street that forms the spine of the city. The columns stand like sentinels, many still bearing the scars of centuries of earthquakes and human neglect. Each step along the marble pathways echoes faintly, as if the past itself breathes beneath your feet. Archaeologists have painstakingly traced the origins of Jerash back to the Hellenistic period, around the 2nd century BCE, noting that it was later absorbed into the Roman Empire. By the 1st century CE, the city had become a flourishing hub of commerce, culture, and religion. Temples, theaters, baths, and fountains adorned its landscape, evidence of a society both prosperous and cosmopolitan. Yet, beyond the well-documented Roman influence, Jerash holds mysteries that defy easy explanation. Some of its structures appear almost impossibly precise. The Temple of Artemis, for instance, with its towering columns and intricate carvings, stands as a testament to both technical skill and artistic vision. Scholars suggest it was constructed using the sophisticated methods typical of Roman engineers, yet certain alignments and measurements raise questions. The columns, some weighing several tons, are arranged in ways that seem to correspond with celestial patterns, a design echoing both Egyptian and Mesopotamian traditions. Could this alignment be coincidence, a tribute to Roman aesthetic sensibilities, or a deliberate attempt to harness cosmic significance? The truth remains elusive. Further along, the Oval Plaza captures the imagination in ways that transcend conventional archaeology. This circular forum, surrounded by 56 Corinthian columns, creates an almost hypnotic symmetry. Ancient texts describe the plaza as a center for public gatherings, processions, and religious ceremonies, yet its geometric perfection hints at an understanding of mathematics and proportion that some modern experts find difficult to reconcile with the technological tools thought to be available at the time. Was this the product of sheer skill and practice, or does it point to a deeper knowledge, one that has been lost to the ages? As sunlight filters through the arches, shadows fall across the ancient stones, creating patterns that seem almost intentional, as if the city itself is guiding the observer's attention to hidden truths embedded in its design. The theaters of Jerash offer another layer of intrigue. The South Theater, capable of seating over 3,000 spectators, remains acoustically remarkable even today. Standing at the stage, one can hear a whispered voice from the farthest row, a phenomenon that has fascinated both engineers and historians. While Roman architects were undoubtedly skilled in acoustics, some have speculated whether there was a deeper understanding at play. Could the builders have harnessed principles of sound in ways that surpassed even the advanced knowledge of their era? The answer remains uncertain, though the effect is undeniable. Among the ruins, inscriptions and carvings hint at cultural and religious practices that blend the familiar with the enigmatic. Symbols etched into stones, now worn by time, suggest influences from distant lands, Persia, Egypt, even India. Trade routes undoubtedly brought diverse ideas to Jerash, yet certain motifs resist straightforward interpretation. One might wonder whether these designs were purely decorative, religious, or served as cryptic messages understood only by select initiates. There is, for example, a series of carvings depicting figures in ritualistic poses whose purpose has never been fully explained. Were these representations of local deities, ceremonial participants, or something else entirely? The absence of definitive records leaves room for speculation, inviting the imagination to wander through corridors of time. Water management in Jerash also provokes questions. The city was equipped with an elaborate system of aqueducts, fountains, and cisterns, ensuring a steady supply of water in an otherwise arid region. Archaeologists have mapped these networks, noting their sophistication, yet there are sections where the engineering seems almost inexplicable. Certain channels and conduits, buried beneath layers of rubble, show gradients and junctions that defy conventional reasoning. How were these aqueducts surveyed with such precision? Could ancient engineers have had access to tools or knowledge that have since vanished? While mainstream explanations point to incremental trial and error combined with observational skill, some theorists suggest a more advanced understanding of hydraulics and topography than is typically credited to that period. The city's endurance through centuries of conquest, natural disasters, and neglect adds another layer to its mystique. Jerash experienced periods of prosperity and decline, yet traces of continuous habitation suggest a resilience that has puzzled historians. Earthquakes, particularly those of the 8th century, caused significant damage, yet entire blocks of buildings remained intact. Some stones bear fractures consistent with seismic activity, yet they stand in alignment as if they were designed to withstand such forces. Was this intentional foresight, the result of empirical observation, or mere fortuity? The answer slips through our fingers like sand, leaving only questions and speculation. Beyond the tangible remnants, Jerash evokes a profound sense of presence, a feeling that the city holds memories not fully accessible to us. Walking through the colonnades at dusk, when the setting sun bathes the ruins in golden light, one cannot help but sense that something more persists. An echo of lives lived, of rituals performed, of knowledge now lost. This sense of lingering consciousness is reinforced by anecdotal accounts from visitors who claim to feel unusual energy or an unexplainable pull toward certain stones or doorways. While these experiences are subjective, they contribute to the aura of mystery that envelops the site. Modern technology continues to uncover new facets of Jerash. Ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping have revealed hidden chambers, buried streets, and previously unknown foundations. Each discovery brings excitement and clarity, yet often raises more questions than it answers. What lies beneath the city may hold keys to understanding its rapid growth, its precise construction, and its cultural significance, yet much remains inaccessible, hidden beneath centuries of soil and human activity. Jerash, in its silent majesty, challenges our understanding of history. It is a city that celebrates human ingenuity, yet simultaneously guards secrets that defy conventional explanation. Its ruins are at once familiar and otherworldly, a testament to civilization, an enigma of design, and a reminder of how much of the ancient world remains shrouded in uncertainty. As we trace the worn stones of its streets and the faded inscriptions on its walls, one cannot help but wonder, what knowledge, what rituals, what innovations are still buried here, waiting to be rediscovered? The ruins of Jerash do not demand answers. They invite contemplation. They remind us that the past is not merely a series of dates and events, but a living puzzle, layered with meaning and mystery. As the sun dips behind the hills and shadows lengthen across the oval plaza, a quiet question lingers in the air, unspoken yet insistent. Could Jerash hold truths about the ancient world that we are only beginning to glimpse, or will its secrets remain forever veiled, waiting for the next observer bold enough to seek them? The wind sweeps across a stark, sun-bleached landscape, carrying with it the faint scent of salt from the nearby Persian Gulf. There, perched upon a flat, desolate plain, stands Al-Uqair Fort, a solitary sentinel of stone and mud, enduring centuries of desert heat and shifting sands. From a distance, its angular silhouette emerges like a mirage, a geometric shape rising abruptly from the flat horizon. Towers punctuate its corners, their edges softened by time, and the thick walls, now weathered and crumbling, hint at both strength and secrecy. For the casual observer, it is a modest, almost unassuming fortress. Yet, for those who step closer, there is an undeniable aura of mystery, an impression that Al-Uqair Fort holds stories both recorded and hidden, whispering across the ages. The fort's origins are rooted in the early Islamic period, though the exact timeline remains uncertain. Historical accounts suggest that it served as a strategic coastal defense, guarding trade routes and overseeing maritime activity along the Arabian Gulf. Archaeologists point to the simple yet remarkably durable construction techniques. Walls of sun-dried mud bricks, reinforced with stone foundations, designed to withstand not only human assault, but also the relentless desert climate. Excavations reveal traces of living quarters, storage rooms, and narrow passageways, suggesting that life within the fort was both organized and utilitarian. Yet, as much as we know, much remains unknown. How such a relatively small fortress came to occupy such a commanding role in regional trade and defense continues to provoke questions. Approaching Al-Uqair, one is struck by its isolation. The surrounding terrain is flat and largely barren, punctuated only by sparse scrub and the occasional bed of salt flats. This setting naturally raises questions about its placement. Why here, on this unremarkable plain, rather than atop a more defensible elevation? Some historians propose that the location offered a vantage point over the sea routes, enabling early warning of approaching vessels. Others suggest more enigmatic reasons. Some researchers have speculated that the site was selected in accordance with ancient geomantic or navigational principles, a practice not uncommon in early desert civilizations. Could it be that the builders understood the land and its unseen energies in ways that are difficult for us to quantify today? The fort's layout adds another layer of intrigue. Unlike many fortresses of its time, Al-Uqair exhibits a remarkably precise, almost mathematical symmetry. Its rectangular plan is punctuated by towers at the corners, connected by walls that follow straight, unyielding lines. Even today, with the erosion of centuries, this geometry remains remarkably clear. Some scholars attribute this to practical defensive design, a straightforward approach to visibility and firing angles, but others note that the alignment seems to correspond with cardinal points. Could this be coincidental? Or might there have been a deliberate intention, a symbolic or astronomical consideration embedded in the very foundations of the fort? Inside the walls, the echoes of past activity linger. Narrow corridors lead to chambers that were once living quarters, storerooms, and lookout posts. The ceilings, long since deteriorated, once provided shelter from the scorching sun and the fierce desert winds. Pottery fragments, remnants of daily life, hint at trade networks extending far beyond the immediate region. Archaeologists have uncovered imported ceramics from distant ports, suggesting that Al-Uqair was more than a military installation. It was part of a wider web of commerce and cultural exchange. Yet alongside these familiar traces of human activity, there are anomalies. Certain walls and passageways seem to follow patterns that defy purely functional explanation. Could these have served ritualistic purposes, or were they intended to convey messages or guide movement in ways we no longer understand? The fort's historical significance is intertwined with stories of maritime activity. Al-Uqair is often linked to the ancient harbor of Dara, a trading city mentioned in classical texts. Dara, like Al-Uqair, occupies the intersection of legend and archaeology. Some scholars suggest that the fort may have served as a monitoring point for merchant fleets, a waypoint in a vast network of trade routes crisscrossing the Arabian Gulf. But the lack of extensive records leaves gaps in the narrative. How did the forters interact with the broader world? How much of its story has been lost to time, buried beneath shifting sands or obscured by centuries of silence? Beyond the historical and practical, Al-Uqair has inspired more speculative theories. Some observers note its proximity to natural features, salt flats, hidden springs, and subtle depressions in the desert that may have had significance in ancient geomancy or ritual practice. Could the fort's builders have been guided by factors beyond the immediately observable, following principles lost to contemporary understanding? Others point to its enduring presence in the landscape as evidence of an almost mystical resilience, as if the structure itself resists the eroding forces of time in ways that conventional architecture cannot entirely explain. It is these subtle oddities that spark curiosity, prompting the question, what knowledge, practical or esoteric, did the fort's architects possess? Archaeological surveys continue to reveal surprises. Ground-penetrating radar has detected subsurface anomalies, voids and foundations not visible from the surface. Some suggest these may be buried chambers or forgotten extensions of the fort. Others speculate they could be related to the ancient trade infrastructure, perhaps hidden docks or storage facilities that have succumbed to centuries of sediment deposition. Each discovery opens new avenues for inquiry, yet none provide definitive answers. The desert conceals as much as it reveals, leaving room for wonder and reflection. The fort's atmospheric isolation contributes to its enigmatic aura. Standing atop one of its remaining towers, the horizon stretches uninterrupted in every direction, the Gulf's waters glinting faintly in the distance. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind and the faint rustle of sand. It is a silence that feels laden with history, as though the stones themselves remember the footsteps of those who once walked these corridors. Visitors report an almost tangible sense of the past, a feeling that time has folded upon itself, leaving the present moment suspended between what was and what might still be hidden. Even the fort's decline adds to its mystery. Unlike other historical sites that succumbed entirely to human neglect or natural disaster, Al-Uqair retains a structural coherence that is remarkable. Sections of walls and towers stand defiantly, resisting collapse despite centuries of exposure. Was this resilience the result of superior engineering, choice of materials, or a more profound understanding of environmental forces? Some researchers are content to attribute it to practical skill and experience. Others allow for the possibility that an aspect of the fort's enduring stability remains unexplained. Al-Uqair, in its quiet endurance, challenges conventional narratives of history. It is neither a monument of grandeur nor of artistic flourish. Its significance is embedded in its subtlety, in the gaps between recorded fact and the unspoken mysteries that linger in the desert air. Its presence raises questions about trade, defense, ritual, and perhaps knowledge that has slipped from human memory. Could the fort have been a node in a broader network of information or influence, now lost to time? Were there messages encoded in its walls or alignments, intelligible only to those who built it? As the sun descends, casting long shadows across the cracked walls and sand-laden floors, the fort's silhouette grows more dramatic against the fading sky. The wind continues its quiet procession, carrying with it fragments of the past, both known and unknowable. Al-Uqair does not speak in certainties. It invites contemplation, observation, and speculation. For those who stand within its walls, the question remains, persistent and unresolved. What truly lies beneath the surface of this desert sentinel, and what remnants of forgotten knowledge or hidden histories might it still guard? In the end, Al-Uqair Fort is less a site to be fully understood than a puzzle to be pondered, a monument to human endeavor, a marker of the passage of time, and a reminder that the deserts of the Middle East still conceal secrets, waiting silently for those willing to look beyond the obvious, into the subtle interplay of stone, sand, and shadow. Its mysteries persist as enduring as the desert itself, leaving an open question suspended in the wind. How much of the past remains hidden, and how close are we to uncovering truths that have eluded us for centuries? The desert wind carries a fine ochre dust across the flat plains of Upper Egypt, brushing against the crumbling stones of a site that has stood largely forgotten for centuries. Al-Minya, a place often overshadowed by the grandeur of Luxor or the mystique of Giza, rises quietly from the earth as a labyrinth of ancient ambition and mystery. From a distance, its walls appear as muted silhouettes, broken here and there by the jagged outlines of collapsed columns and toppled statues. The ruins are unassuming, yet within their quiet, time-worn presence lies a narrative of power, knowledge, and questions that science has yet to fully answer. The site of Al-Minya has been partially identified as the remains of a significant urban center, associated with the Middle Kingdom and flourishing through the New Kingdom into later periods of Egyptian history. Archaeologists have uncovered foundations of palaces, temples, and administrative buildings, hinting at a city of considerable wealth and strategic importance. Its location along the Nile was no accident. The river's seasonal ebb and flow provided sustenance, trade routes, and a natural artery linking Al-Minya to the greater Egyptian world. Yet for all the clarity provided by these discoveries, the site retains an elusive quality, as though much of its story has been deliberately or naturally concealed. As one steps among the ruins, the scale of human endeavor becomes apparent. The walls, constructed from massive limestone blocks, bear the subtle scars of tools long vanished. Some blocks, weighing several tons, are arranged in precise alignments that suggest a meticulous understanding of geometry and surveying. Historians attribute these techniques to skilled labor and careful planning, yet questions remain. How did the builders achieve such precision without the standardized measuring tools we take for granted today? Could there have been methods or knowledge that the ancients possessed but left unrecorded, lost to the sands of time? The mystery is not in the monumentality alone, but in the subtle perfection of its construction, a perfection that continues to provoke wonder. Among the most striking features of Al-Minya are the temple foundations, now partially excavated but still hinting at former grandeur. Carvings on remaining walls depict figures in ritualistic poses, deities whose forms and attributes are familiar, yet their arrangement and context raise questions. Some symbols and hieroglyphs appear anomalous, deviating from canonical Egyptian representations. Could these deviations reflect regional variations, influences from distant lands, or esoteric knowledge reserved for a select few? The temple's orientation, too, has drawn scholarly attention. Certain structures align in ways that correspond with celestial events, suggesting that the builders were not merely architects, but observers of the heavens. Was this alignment practical, symbolic, or something more mysterious, an encoded connection to cosmic cycles we are only beginning to comprehend? The city's administrative and residential areas reveal further enigmas. Excavations have uncovered granaries, storage rooms, and workshops, indicating a sophisticated economy and a populace deeply engaged in trade, production, and governance. Yet there are anomalies in the layout. Streets that seem to follow no obvious pattern, corridors that dead-end inexplicably, and walls that defy purely functional logic. Some researchers suggest these irregularities could have had ceremonial or defensive purposes, while others propose that they may encode knowledge or serve as markers for hidden features yet undiscovered. The city's very design seems to invite inquiry, a puzzle left deliberately incomplete, or perhaps partially obscured by time. Pottery, inscriptions, and small artifacts provide tantalizing hints about the people who lived here. Some pottery fragments indicate trade networks extending far beyond Egypt's borders, suggesting connections with regions of the Near East, Nubia, and the Mediterranean. Inscriptions, partially eroded by centuries of wind and water, hint at administrative sophistication. Yet some texts remain frustratingly indecipherable. Are these remnants of lost dialects, shorthand used for internal records, or symbolic codes understood only by the elite? Each fragment raises more questions than it answers, revealing a civilization both highly organized and enigmatically secretive. One of the most compelling mysteries of Al-Minya lies beneath its surface. Ground-penetrating radar surveys and limited excavations hint at subterranean features, tunnels, chambers, and foundations extending beyond the areas currently visible. Some suggest these may have been storage facilities, ritual spaces, or defensive bunkers. Others wonder if they conceal elements of the city's original layout, deliberately hidden from invaders or preserved for ceremonial purposes. The full extent of what lies underground remains unknown, leaving the imagination to roam across possibilities. Secret archives of knowledge, forgotten sanctuaries, or infrastructure that could reshape our understanding of the city's role in Egyptian history. The artistic elements within Al-Minya also provoke thought. Fragments of statuary, some barely recognizable, depict figures in poses that seem both familiar and subtly alien. Scholars debate whether these stylistic choices were regional adaptations, attempts to depict local rulers, or symbolic representations with meanings now lost. Certain motifs recur in ways that defy easy explanation: spiral designs, geometric patterns, and animal forms that do not match established iconography. Were these merely decorative flourishes, or could they hint at a symbolic language, a visual code intertwined with the spiritual or political life of the city? Al-Minya's broader context within the Middle Eastern world adds layers to its intrigue. Positioned between the more famous sites of Thebes and Memphis, yet removed enough to develop its own character, the city may have functioned as a hub for experimentation, governance, or religious innovation. Trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange could explain some of its anomalies, yet others resist conventional explanation. Certain construction techniques, materials, and alignments seem to transcend local norms, raising questions about knowledge transfer across regions, or even the survival of architectural or scientific principles that have not persisted in the historical record. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows across the broken walls and scattered stones, the ruins of Al-Minya seem to pulse with a quiet, enduring presence. The wind whispers through empty corridors, carrying the echoes of footsteps long vanished, of rituals performed in solemnity, and of lives once deeply intertwined with the river that sustained them. Standing here, one is struck by the duality of the site. It is at once thoroughly human, a product of labor, governance, and creativity, and yet profoundly mysterious, as if aspects of its design and purpose exist just beyond our capacity to fully comprehend. In this silence, questions accumulate. What knowledge was encoded in the city's architecture, art, and urban planning? What factors guided the placement of its structures, the orientation of its temples, or the arrangement of its streets? Could Al-Minya hold evidence of ancient practices or technologies lost to time, preserved only in subtle alignments, hidden chambers, or enigmatic inscriptions? Each stone, each fragment of pottery, each worn carving hints at a civilization that was sophisticated, deliberate, and, in some ways, unknowable. Al-Minya does not offer easy answers. Its ruins invite contemplation, observation, and imagination, encouraging the visitor to look beyond the visible and question the conventional narratives of history. The city stands as a reminder that the ancient world is not merely a sequence of dates and rulers, but a complex, layered reality in which knowledge, power, and mystery intersect. Even today, as archaeologists uncover fragments of walls and artifacts, new questions arise. How much of Al-Minya's story remains hidden beneath the earth, and what truths about human ingenuity, ritual, or understanding of the cosmos might still be waiting to emerge? As twilight settles across the Nile's edge, casting the ruins in a soft, golden light, the city seems to breathe in the fading day. Al-Minya does not demand interpretation. It invites wonder. Its mysteries linger like shadows between the stones, subtle but insistent, reminding us that even in places where we believe we understand the past, there are always layers yet to be uncovered, enigmas yet to be solved, and stories waiting silently beneath the surface, calling for the curious to seek them out.